this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
What if mind control is real?
If you could control the behavior of anybody around you, what kind of life would you have?
Can you hypnotically persuade someone to buy a car?
When you look at your car, you're going to become overwhelmed with such good feelings.
Can you hypnotize someone into sleeping with you?
I gave her some suggestions to be sexually aroused.
Can you get someone to join your cult?
NLP was used on me to access my subconscious.
Mind Games, a new podcast exploring NLP, aka Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Is it a self-help miracle, a shady hypnosis scam, or both? Listen to Mind Games on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You can scroll the headlines all day and still feel empty. I'm Ben Higgins, and If You Can Hear Me is where culture meets the soul. Honest conversations about identity, loss, purpose, peace, faith, and everything in between. Celebrities, thinkers, everyday people, some have answers, most are still figuring it out. And if you've ever felt like there has to be more to the story, this show is for you. Listen to If You Can Hear Me on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, it's Jill Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And today I'm talking with my dear friend, Krista Williams.
It can change you in the best way possible. Dance with the change, dance with the breakdowns.
The embodiment of Pisces intuition with Capricorn power moves.
So I'm like delusionally proud of my chart.
Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
This is Special Agent Regal, Special Agent Bradley Hall.
In 2018, the FBI took down a ring of spies working for China's Ministry of State Security, one of the most mysterious intelligence agencies in the world.
The Sixth Bureau podcast is a story of the inner workings of the MSS and how one man's ambition and mistakes opened its vault of secrets.
Listen to The Sixth Bureau on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey there, I'm Jess.
Milady Confetti here.
Hi, I'm Psyche.
And I'm Hey Shady Lady.
And welcome to Boss Level,
a podcast where we feature conversations with guests who have leveled up, bringing an XP boost to the table.
We pick the brains of professionals, creators, and bosses in industries across the globe to help our listeners achieve their own boss level.
We are not just creating a podcast, but a gamified and engaged community.
Listen to Boss Level on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay, recording. You have a story to tell, and maybe you've thought, I should start a podcast. Meet Anchor. It's a powerful app that lets you record a podcast anywhere and get it heard everywhere. All you need to do is download the free Anchor app and hit record. Just go to anchor.fm/get started. Your story matters. Make a podcast with Anchor. That's anchor.fm/get started. Great, I think we got it.
Hey, it's Dua Lipa. I'm here to tell you about my brand new podcast, Dua Lipa at Your Service. I'll be sitting down with the world's most inspiring minds to uncover what makes them tick and what they've learned from the obstacles life has thrown at them, including Sir Elton John.
After a lot of upsets, a lot of disappointments, a lot of betrayals, it's turned out to be the most wonderful life right now that I could have ever imagined.
Listen to Dua Lipa at Your Service on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey everybody, Robert Evans here, and I wanted to let you know this is a compilation episode. So every episode of the week that just happened is here in one convenient and with somewhat less ads package for you to listen to in a long stretch if you want. If you've been listening to the episodes every day this week, there's going to be nothing new here for you, but you can make your own decisions.
All right, I will find some clever way to introduce us.
Identical.
Huh. You know what? I might just go with that. I will find some clever way to introduce us, and that is the introduction now, because I said it. Hello, welcome to It Could Happen Here. Today we are going to be talking about internet privacy and some new bills that will possibly undermine it. Today, I have with me Christopher. Hello, Christopher.
Hello, I am here. I am I don't know if excited is the right word, but
no one should ever be. People are rarely excited to come on the show.
Yeah, no, this is a mild dread of the future of the internet.
I try because we definitely can. Things don't need to be always horrible and grim, even when you're talking about things that aren't great. But yeah, today we'll be talking about some interesting things. As per the title of this episode will probably be related to, we are talking about the proposed Earn It Act. And I'll explain what it is and the different kind of implications it could have on how, like, everyone uses the internet. But also it affects a few specific types of people in particular. So, but kind of part of this whole thing, we're going to start off by talking about something a little bit different and then to kind of segue to the Earn It Act. So last year, Apple, the company, announced like a controversial plan to install photo scanning software into every device. Apple's kind of long been seen as a pro-privacy company. In the past, they have like refused FBI demands to help investigators bypass locked phones. So this idea and this plan to create a backdoor into the iPhone storage system to scan for photos was kind of a big deal coming from Apple, because they were definitely, at least in the past, known as a generally, like, out of all of the companies, the ones that, if you're dealing with sensitive matters, Apple is generally the better one. Now that has become less of a case in the past few years, but that definitely was the case. So when this kind of idea was announced, there was a decently sized global coalition also formed to push back on this thing. And the company did pause the plan. Now, this came at a time that a lot of different kind of companies were also pushing back against not safe for work materials, specifically for like relating to like the transaction of money in banks. This was, around the time that OnlyFans was flip-flopping on whether they would actually have not safe for work kind of materials as a part of this kind of growing trend of like worrying about the term now is like child sexual abuse materials. More traditionally, it's called child pornography, or it's part of this kind of overall kind of extra focus that tech companies have about being worried that if someone is doing that who is underage, or if someone's being exploited who's underage, they could financially hurt the company. So they're trying to. Lots of companies have been trying to do this thing to prevent that legal and financial issue from happening. Now, of course, all this really actually ends up doing is just negatively affecting sex workers. But that's kind of a topic for a different episode, because we're talking about the Earn It Act more specifically, and not specifically talking about OnlyFans. But this was Apple's plan to kind of scan all these photos to make sure that there were not, naked photos of children. Now, there's a whole bunch of other privacy issues around that, because, obviously teens do take nudes and send them to each other, and there is really no stopping that. So the idea that all these photos are getting scanned and then seen, and then like it would be the idea was that parents would be like alerted if something was found on the phone automatically, which means that for me, I have a whole bunch of other issues with that. Like that is a whole other kind of level of like fucked up, especially for queer kids. Like that is like that is a whole that is mostly a whole other discussion that I'm not going to talk about right now, because I do want to focus this more on the Earn It Act. But so this plan was paused. But now that may not necessarily matter, actually, because Congress kind of wants to force Apple's hand, along with essentially every other company that allows users to store or share messages or kind of really any content. And Congress is some senators, and there's a bill that will try to essentially mandate photo scanning and specific photo scanning technology approved by the government. So, yeah. So while Apple's plan would have put privacy and the security at risk for all of its users, the Earn It Act compromises the security and free speech for basically everyone who uses the internet. The bill would create serious legal risks for businesses that host content such as messages or photos stored in the cloud, online backups, and potentially even any kind of cloud hosting sites such as Amazon Web Services, which means basically most of the internet.
Yep. Yeah.
And basically, so all of these services and companies would be in serious legal risk unless they use this government-approved scanning tools. A version of this bill was first introduced 2 years ago, sponsored by Senator Lindsey Graham, a Republican from South Carolina, and Senator Richard Blumenthal, a Democrat from Connecticut. And now, like a lot of these other things, it is allegedly aimed at tackling so-called child sexual abuse material online, which is a problem. The kids definitely do get exploited. Kids do get groomed, exploited. Photos of children do get shared online. That actually is a real issue. Now, a lot of the ways that these tools get implemented don't actually address that issue, and of course, it doesn't actually deal with the people that do this, like the bad people that do exploit kids. It doesn't necessarily deal with them either. That is what they wrap this idea as. The original bill that was introduced 2 years ago threatened encryption and privacy features that would have actually, put Americans' privacy, particularly the privacy of children, at risk. It also gutted Section 230 in ways that caused over 50 civil rights groups to pen a letter describing the potential consequences of such things like censorship, cramming down on free speech, and the basically destruction of encryption. So when the legislation failed to advance 2 years ago, digital liberty advocates, sex workers, civil rights organizations all breathed a sigh of relief. But this past month, as I record this, in February 2022, a group of lawmakers, again led by Senator Richard Blumenthal and Senator Lindsey Graham, reintroduced the Earn It Act, a slightly modified version of it. And on the 10th of February, the Senate Judiciary Committee voted to advance the dangerous Earn It Act bill. So, yeah, it is chugging along a bit further than what it did last time. The Earn It Act aims to tackle the horrific criminal activity related to child sexual abuse material by making Section 230 protections contingent on the prevention and response to such material online. So Section 230 shields online services, like, commonly used social media, from liability from most user-generated content. Under Earn It, Section 230 would be amended to enable civil claims and state criminal prosecution related to child abuse materials online against platforms. Now, already this can kind of happen federally a little bit, but it depends on how the company responds to it. So, but this would introduce a whole new wave for civil claims and state claims to be filed against companies like this. If material like this is to be found hosted on their site, including, that would even include if someone who's underage operates a not safe for work Twitter account that they probably should not be operating. But this could basically make the company in trouble. They could fall under state claims or civil claims. So as a result, online services could be subject to endless litigation under 50 different, legal law systems for all the states regarding, finding child sexual abuse material online. So the bill's proponents claim that this isn't necessarily a problem for any service as long as it is scanning the files and reporting child sexual abuse material to law enforcement. Internet companies are already required to report suspected material if they come across it, and they do report material on a massive scale that often comes with a lot of mistakes. Facebook is often held as a positive example by lawmakers and law enforcement for how much they do report such material. But while their new scanning techniques have produced many millions of reports, most of them are inaccurate. Most of them actually aren't of minors. It's not actually none of the scanning material is good, because a lot of cases, many people up into their 30s can get often flagged, and often even non-humans can get flagged, pictures of fruit none of these scanning tools are actually very good.
Yeah, and this is I think a thing that if you've never had to work with a machine learning algorithm before, I think it's difficult to understand how unbelievably bad these things are.
Yeah,
it is, oh god, the incomprehensible horror of trying to get a machine learning algorithm to do the thing that you want it to do and not do the other things that you don't want it to do, to be able to tell the difference between a particularly smooth and round peach and child sex abuse material. You human being can do this, right? The machine cannot, and it is horrifically inaccurate. You have to do all kinds of hacking stuff together in order to get this stuff to work, and it's a fiasco.
a good example of this that I've heard before, that I'm probably going to butcher this explanation, but that you can take a photo of a wolf, maybe even 3 photos of a wolf, and say, here, these are photos of wolves. Here's these other photos. Find which ones are wolves, and it'll sort through other ones. So some of them have wolves, some of them don't. And it only finds one picture that says, this one's based on the 3 photos you've given me. This photo is a wolf. And instead the photo is not. The photo is of a tree. And you're like, why did it tell me this is a wolf? And the computer will answer, well, look at all of the backgrounds are the same. Because it's trying to match, like, it doesn't have the same thing that humans do. When all these computer algorithms that are trying to learn to replicate and to find these patterns, it is never perfect. So the big thing that is people often overlook is that, specifically with this, like with Facebook's scanning tool and the millions of reports that it does make, federal law enforcement will frequently use the massive number of reports to suggest there is this giant recent uptick in child sexual abuse materials. But that's not because there actually is. That's because the scanning that some companies are doing is just so bad. Like it's just so inaccurate that it flags so many things. So like in action, the new Earn It Act would just pave a massive new surveillance system run by private companies that would roll back some of the most important privacy and security features and technology used by people around the globe, right? The idea is to compel private companies to scan every message sent online and report violations to law enforcement. And it may not stop there. The Earn It Act could ensure anything hosted online, including like backups, websites, cloud photos, and more, is all scanned. Now, of course, you can say, there is no actual true privacy online, right? The NSA does see everything, which is basically true. But stuff like local police departments and the FBI do not have constant access to what the NSA has. It does actually, like legally, it does actually take some time for that to happen. The fact that all these private companies would be doing it for them, and the fact that this would actually break encryption makes people like the FBI, makes the local law enforcement have a much easier time accessing what we do on the internet. Because yes, the NSA kind of does always see everything, but this actually is quite different in terms of the accessibility of that information.
And I think it's also, to go back into one of the sort of like encryption arguments too, right? So, okay, once you put a backdoor into encryption, right? Once you have, you have your system, you have your encryption system, but now there's a way to access it, right? Because we need to access these, we need to be able to decrypt this in order to see if there's like child pornography materials on it, right? Once that backdoor exists, anyone who finds it can use it for anything they want.
And it's not even just that. Like we'll get into some other things around encryption, but yeah, continue.
Yeah, and and I think this is something that I think people don't like. The people who are just thinking about this in terms of child pornography don't think about, which is that, like, I don't know, these kinds of backdoors, right? Like other people can find them.
Yes.
And, okay, now you've just put a backdoor in all of your encryption, like, oh, hey, here's, like here, you are going to get people killed, and you're going to get people killed because you're going to have people who are doing things under governments that, will like, you're going to have people in Myanmar. You're going to have people in, you're going to have people in Egypt. You're going to have people in Syria who like, these regimes and like these private companies, right, are going to sell the backdoors to these regimes, and they are going to use it to hunt down, torture, and kill people. And
so there is a lot of problems with it, especially how it kind of addresses encryption, because the bill does try to actually have some encryption protections, but the way they go about it, of course, is not adequate, and it even kind of fosters its own negation in some ways if you read the entire bill. So, but I'll get more into encryption in a sec, because there are other like technical issues with the way this bill is designed and how it would be enacted. There is this sort of benefit to having illegal material that is actually exploding minors being primarily hosted on big tech platforms, because these platforms are used so much and are mostly non-restricted. So it makes catching this stuff and reporting it actually much easier. Like it is, if they're hosted on these mainstream things, it does make seeing it and reporting less difficult. So not only will this bill make tech companies be more likely just to ban all not safe for work material in general, right? Because if companies are forced to scan and if they're going to be filing so many reports, this will result in a lot more companies just saying, saying no nude photos at all, like just completely gone. Not only will this bill just make tech companies more likely to ban all not safe for work content in general, which would be horrible for sex workers and just a bad precedent, but yeah, they would be more likely just to do that because of how much overscanning there would be and just a whole bunch of things. It would create too many fears of legal repercussions. Thus, that would force people who distribute child porn onto more sketchy sites and sites that might just refuse to scan content in general because they're temporary hosting. But the bill could also just scare these bad people off of mainstream platforms and make them voluntarily migrate to more niche and hard to find corners of the internet, making illegal content harder to catch and take down, because there will always be weird temporary sites to host this type of thing. Like these bad people will find a way. It's always like it is gonna always be a problem. And so in a way, it is better to have these things on mainstream platforms because reporting them and taking them down can be much easier. It's like when people really advocate platforms like Telegram shut down all fascist channels, right? The thing is that there's a lot of benefits to having these chat rooms on Telegram because it makes them really easy to monitor and really easy to infiltrate. So there's a lot worse places for fascists to organize. If you're doing it on Telegram, it's actually really easy to watch. So it's this weird give and take in terms of where these things happen, because they are going to happen somewhere. So I now want to talk about how specifically this bill threatens online encryption services. All right. The bill would strip critical legal protection for websites, apps, and specifically Section 230. If passed, it would empower many different levels of government to make sweeping new internet regulations, right? Individual states will be able to pass laws to hold private companies like liable, as long as they somehow relate their new rules to child abuse materials. It's like they will be able to have a whole bunch of new rules on internet regulations if they can sift it through this lens. The goal is to get states to pass these laws that will punish companies when they deploy end-to-end encryption or offer other encryption services. This includes messaging systems like WhatsApp, Signal, iMessage, and as well as web hosting like Amazon Web Services. EarnIt aims to spread the use of tools to scan all online content against law enforcement databases, directly. In a myths and facts document distributed by the bill's proponents, it even names a government-approved software program that they could mandate called a PhotoDNA, which is a program that Microsoft made that reports directly to law enforcement databases. So EarnIt doesn't specifically attack encryption per se, but that's because it doesn't need to. It doesn't have to because of the way the bill is designed. How it approaches encryption is actually a little more insidious. It allows the fact that encryption exists on the platform itself to be used as evidence against a company in order to find it liable for hosting child sexual abuse materials. So they can use the fact that encryption exists as evidence, which is wild.
This is
what?
This is the thing. This is the thing the CCP does a lot. Like with, they'll use the fact that like someone is using a VPN, for example, as evidence that they're a terrorist.
Yes.
This happens constantly, and it makes a lot of encryption stuff incredibly unsafe because, like, you show up with your phone, you have Signal on it, and the CCP is like, well, this is proof. We're gonna lock you up and throw away the key.
Yep.
And yeah, it's extremely bad.
So the result is that laws will make companies liable if they don't scan and report user content for child sexual abuse materials, which they can't do unless they break encryption. Big companies like Apple are going to fold to protect themselves. So EarnIt it coerces these sites and platforms and services to do this sort of scanning, and not just on messages, but all online content, encrypted or not. Companies that handle online content would have to weigh the benefit of their users securely encrypting their data content against the legal risk of doing so. And encryption becomes much harder when it puts the company's bottom line at risk. And like end-to-end encryption isn't just for messages, right? It's not just on Signal. It secures most of the internet, or at least a lot of it, keeping what you do allegedly private and safe online. You can't have a secure internet where all of the content is also screened, because you can't have end-to-end encryption alongside mass scanning requirements. So this isn't just an attack on encryption, it's an attack on any fundamental security that the internet has.
Yeah, and there's lots of like, God, there are lots of extremely technical reasons why this is an extremely bad thing.
Yes.
Like, it's like, okay, yeah, like you think malware is bad now. Like,
oh gosh,
like look at like the things that will happen. Like you think people are stealing apes now. Like the things that will happen if you have to if you have to deal with an internet that's unencrypted are, like
it'll
be an absolute horror show.
Yeah.
Like this is a thing bad enough that like I do not have the words to express how catastrophic this would be,
because
just the fundamental structure of the internet.
It really is not just for messages. Like the Earn It Myth and Fast document also like specifically attacks Amazon for not scanning enough of its content. And since Amazon is the home of Amazon Web Services, which hosts a huge number of websites, that implies that like the bill's aim is to ensure that anything hosted online also gets scanned, like everything. The online service providers, even the smallest ones, will be compelled to scan user content with government-approved software like PhotoDNA. And if Earn It supporters succeed in getting large platforms like Cloudflare and Amazon Web Services to scan, they may not even need to compel smaller websites because the government will already have access to the data through the cloud platforms. So, like, as long as they get these big hosting platforms, they won't even need to bother with a lot of smaller sites.
I think there's another thing I think that's probably worth mentioning here, which is, so we don't really have like the time to fully go into this in this episode, but like there's a lot of this sort of stuff is being pushed by these incredibly right-wing evangelical anti-porn groups.
Yes.
And their goal is just to eliminate anything that is not like part of their sort of fundamentalist Christianity from the internet. Yep. And those people, and this is particularly relevant to this because those people are going to find a way to bring lawsuits against these companies specifically so that they can do this, because this is what you've done is you've just handed them a gun.
Porn sites will all be taken down because they'll be facing so many endless lawsuits.
Yeah.
Like OnlyFans will no longer host ethical porn. None of this will all of it will be taken down. No one this will attack sex workers to such an absurd degree. It'll make a lot of, if not most, online sex work just impossible, because there will be so many lawsuits always happening that companies will just always ban it just because they can't risk dealing with all those legal fees. And in the fact that state prosecutors and private attorneys will be able to drag an online service provider into court over accusation that their users committed crimes, and then use the fact that the service chose to encrypt, chose to use encryption at all as evidence against them, is the fact that that's a strategy specifically allowed under Earn It makes the possibilities of this type of thing just endless. Imagine they'll be able to take down Signal so easily because it's wild. If they can find one instance of of an abuser using Signal or has used Signal, then basically all of Signal's encryption will be severely threatened because of the way that legal fines will be forced onto this company. It is specifically for stuff based for any kind of any service allowed in the States. And yeah, it's really frustrating because people, including senators who are pro Earn It, say that the new tools are necessary to tackle the issue of online child abuse and the distribution of illegal materials online. But, obviously, possessing, viewing, or distributing child porn or child sexual abuse materials is already written into law as a serious, extremely serious crime.
It's the most illegal thing you can do.
Yes, and it has a broad framework of existing laws seeking to eradicate it, right? People cannot, companies can already get in federal trouble if they're found to continue if stuff is found and they continue to host it, or if their stated purpose is to host it, some of the most trouble you can get into, at least on the books, because you can look at how many cops are involved with this type of thing as evidence, being as evidence that it may not get enacted upon always. There was a horrible story recently of a teacher who, sorry, this is going to be quite graphic, but of a like skip ahead like a minute or two if you don't want to, of a teacher who fed students food containing her husband's semen. Her husband was a cop, and her husband, again, who was a cop, the leader of a SWAT team, had raped multiple children. As like it had pictures of children. And both of them were doing this together. So like, yeah, that's like the leader of a SWAT team. It's like police, like the fact that like, if you look at the people often doing this type of stuff, it's cops a lot of the time. Like the cops rape so many kids that they arrest and detain. It is shocking. Like you can Google this every week and you'll find like new reports of it. It is horrific. And, online service providers that have actual knowledge of an apparent or imminent violation of current laws around child sexual abuse materials are required to report it, or they will face legal trouble.
Like you can kill people and get in less trouble with the law than you will get if you intentionally do this stuff. Like there are scenarios where you can kill people where you won't get in trouble with the law. There is no scenario where you intentionally do this stuff where you will like unless you're a cop with like with the legal protection of your other cops won't rat you out. Or you're like very, very rich. Unless you have extra legal protection, like you are fucking going to vanish.
So yeah, like we already have a lot of stuff to deal with this, and the methods proposed by Earn-It would not only chip at the last semblance of privacy online, but it would arguably make actually combating real instances of online child abuse a lot more difficult. It would pressure distributors and abusers into harder to find corners of the internet that don't fall under big tech companies. Plus the massive increase in content scanning would produce so many false flags, it would clog up any effort to find actual materials because so much stuff is going to get flagged, right? You're going to get a wave of so many images that you have to sort through and figure out if the people in it actually are underage, because a lot of people who look 30, a lot of people that are 30 can also look underage sometimes, like with lighting, with effect, like it will be it's gonna like be such a task. And we can already see this in effect with new scanning techniques used by Facebook. That have produced millions of reports to law enforcement, most of them inaccurate. And of course, federal law enforcement uses this massive number of reports produced by low quality scanning software to suggest there's a huge uptick in these images. Thus, armed with misleading statistics, the same law enforcement groups make new demands to break encryption, or with Earn-It, hold companies liable if they don't scan user content.
The scanning algorithms, right? Like, okay, this is an oversimplification, but like to conceptualize why this is a bad idea, like this is the same stuff that, like, you know how there's those like trending topics on Twitter, and they'll show you a tweet, and the tweet will be like, I don't know, there'll be someone talking about a Subway sandwich, and it'll get like it'll show up under trains. Right, because it's the Subway.
Yes,
like
exactly.
Those are the algorithms that they want to fucking run the entire internet through.
I have seen some very erotic bell peppers. And like it's gonna like these things aren't going to be good. And like independent child protection experts are not asking for systems to read everyone's private messages. Rather, they recognize that children, particularly children that might be abused or exploited, actually need encrypted and private messaging just as much, if not more, than the rest of us. Like, no one, including the most vulnerable among us, can have privacy or security online without strong encryption. And the Earn-It Act doesn't really just target big tech. What it does is it targets every individual internet user, treating all of us as potential criminals who deserve to have every single message, photograph, or document scanned and, compared against a government database, like directly to law enforcement. And since direct government surveillance would be, blatantly unconstitutional and provoke public outrage, Earn-It uses tech companies, from the largest ones to the smallest ones, as its tools to kind of bypass that constitutional, like, barrier. Because if you hit the companies where it hurts, they will not allow this type of stuff at all. Like, and this is also you cannot deny that this is also just part of a larger effect to ban porn, and just to ban any kind of sex work online as well. Like you cannot deny that this is definitely an ingrained part of this, particularly with a lot of its supporters, and of course Senator Lindsey Graham appealing to that side of the Republicans. This is a big part of just trying to remove porn and remove any not safe work material from being hosted online. So the strategy is to get private companies to do the dirty work of mass surveillance. It's the same tactic that governments tried to use this year, trying to convince Apple to subvert its own encryption and scan all of its users' photos. It's the same strategy that the UK law enforcement is using to convince the British public to give up their privacy, having spent public money on a laughable publicity campaign that demonizes companies that use encryption. So that's really how it's operating. I do want to shout out the EFF for providing a lot of the kind of research that I used for compiling stuff on this episode. Thank you, EFF. You often do good work. That's the Electronic Frontier Foundation. They focus a lot on internet privacy issues. And I do want to point people to a link tree. It is linktr.ee/stopearnit. So yeah, you can find different ways to, if you're the type of person that enjoys calling representatives or something, it has links for that kind of thing. It has links to send, automated messages to your representative to vote no on the Earn It Act. It has stuff, if you're the type of person that enjoys signing petitions, it has more info on what Earn It is and what it does. And a whole bunch of other stuff around, organizing to help stop this bill. There's Discord channels that have people organizing to stop this bill. Links for it on that. It has info on actions you can take. So yeah, I would if you're interested in looking for the different ways that you can maybe contribute. No single person can make an impact, but enough people can. So yeah, that's Linktree/StopEarnIt. And then also, again, another shout out to the EFF.
Yeah, I wanted to say two closing things before we close this out. One, if you think that once you're handing the entire contents of the internet over to the government to run through scanning algorithms, that the only thing they're ever going to scan for is child pornography, I have an NFT to sell you. It is a picture of a bridge. Once you buy this NFT of the bridge, you will own the Brooklyn Bridge. Contact me for more details. The second thing is that, when we talk about when we talk about anti-porn stuff, when we talk about how the way you get around this is by banning all not suited for work content, right? The other thing that almost immediately gets banned, inevitably, when companies for whatever reason, and this is true just of companies that are trying to comply with the App Store or stuff like that. Whenever you get things that target not suited for work content, they inevitably without fail target queer content. Even queer content that has literally nothing at all to do with sexuality, because that's this has always been accusing queer people of being child predators has been the attack line on queer people.
Queer people are always on the front line of all of this stuff. They will always be the first people impacted. They'll be the first people demonized, even if it's not even not safe work material. If it has nothing to do with it, it will still always be impacted more than basically anyone else.
Yeah, I mean we've been seeing this on YouTube constantly.
Yes.
Lots of people who just make trans content.
Queer channels are always being banned or demonetized.
Yep, marked as adult content. It's horrifying. And if you want an internet, not even just if you want an internet that has sex on it, if you want an internet that has queer people on it, right, expressing themselves in any way that's not literally just it's straight person but you say queer, right? If that's a thing that you think is valuable, and if you think that it is important for queer people to be able to express themselves for their own health and safety, you have to oppose this.
Yes. You absolutely. I guess one final thing I'll add, because I know someone will probably message me about it. There is a Slate opinion piece by somebody saying that this bill would actually let child abusers walk free because they could use the fact that this bill essentially compels companies to do scanning software via government like mandate because of this bill. They would because in their mind, this could possibly violate the Fourth Amendment. This would allow abusers, the evidence that is collected to prosecute abusers, to become invalid in court. So this would actually also make the bill actually make people walk free. I do not agree with this take. I don't think that's how it would work out at all, because especially for, you can use this for like political organizing. You can use this for a lot of you can use the same argument for a lot of cases, and it never works out that way because the government does not care about that sort of thing. It's not, that's not how it works. Even if things get violated, like in theory, that does not, that's no way. They illegally seized, Ted Kaczynski's, evidence, and it doesn't matter. That's not going to matter, because then this bill would be seen as a good thing, because it would prevent people from, then encryption wouldn't be necessary, because then none of the evidence that people would have gathered would ever be admissible in court, and that they would never design the bill like that. That's not the case. Yeah. I disagree with this take. So do not send me this article saying actually it's going to have this happen, because I do not believe it, because this assumes that the government operates like coherently and operates the government does not care.
No, the First Amendment is superseded by traffic law. Yeah, you're not going to be able to use.
No, this isn't. No, this will not secretly let abusers go free. This is not secretly a good thing because it'll make all evidence inadmissible in court. Bullshit.
No, yeah.
Anyway,
the court.
Anyway, I'll give a final shout out to the Linktree /StopEarnIt. That's linkt.er/StopEarnIt. If you're the type of person that likes doing those types of things. And also it has links to Discord channels for other types of organizing beyond, petitions and calling and senators and sending messages and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, that is the episode. Thank you for listening. I just thought this is an important thing enough that I haven't seen enough. I have not seen enough people talking about the Earn It Act and the way it does.
Hi, this is Jo Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And I just sat down with a Minnie Driver.
The Irish traveller said when I was 16, you're going to have a terrible time with men.
Actor, storyteller, and unapologetic Aquarian visionary. Aquarius is all about freedom-loving and different perspectives, and I find a lot of people with strong placements in Aquarius are misunderstood. A Sun and Venus in Aquarius in her 7th house spark her unconventional approach to partnership.
He really has taught me to embrace people sleeping in different rooms, on different houses, in different places, but just an embracing of the isness of it all.
If you're navigating your own transformation or just want a chart-side view into how a leading artist integrates astrology, creativity, and real life, this episode is a must listen. Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
What if mind control is real?
If you could control the behavior of anybody around you, what kind of life would you have?
Can you hypnotically persuade someone to buy a car?
When you look at your car, you're going to become overwhelmed with such good feelings.
Can you hypnotize someone into sleeping with you?
I gave her some suggestions to be sexually aroused.
Can you get someone to join your cult?
NLP was used on me to access my subconscious.
NLP, aka Neuro-Linguistic Programming, is a blend of hypnosis, linguistics, and psychology. Fans say it's like finally getting a user manual for your brain.
It's about engineering consciousness.
Mind Games is the story of NLP. Its crazy cast of disciples and the fake doctor who invented it at a New Age commune and sold it to guys in suits. He stood trial for murder and got acquitted. The biggest mind game of all? NLP might actually work.
This is wild.
Listen to Mind Games on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
What do you do when the headlines don't explain what's happening inside of you? I'm Ben Higgins, and If You Can Hear Me is where culture meets the soul, a place for real conversation. Each episode, I sit down with people from all walks of life, celebrities, thinkers, and everyday folks, and we go deeper than the polished story. We talk about what drives us, what shapes us, and what gives us hope. We get honest about the big stuff: identity when you don't recognize yourself anymore, loss that changes you, purpose when success isn't enough, peace when your mind won't slow down, faith when it's complicated. Some guests have answers. Most are still figuring it out. If you've ever felt like there has to be more to the story, this show is for you. Listen to If You Can Hear Me on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
In 2023, a story gripped the UK, evoking horror and disbelief.
The nurse who should have been in charge of caring for tiny babies is now the most prolific child killer in modern British history.
Everyone thought they knew how it ended. A verdict, a villain, a nurse named Lucy Letby.
Lucy Letby has been found guilty.
But what if we didn't get the whole story?
The moment you look at the whole picture, the case collapses.
I'm Amanda Knox, and in the new podcast, Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby, we follow the evidence and hear from the people that lived it to ask what really happened when the world decided who Lucy Letby was.
No voicing of any skepticism or doubt.
It'll cause so much harm at every single level of the British establishment of this is wrong.
Listen to Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Seriously threaten digital privacy, and because it was approved by the Senate Judiciary Committee to be pushed forward, it is actually chugging along on the slow legal process. So it's gotten further than what it got in 2020. So I thought it is actually worth talking about. For privacy issues, how it affects queer people, how it affects sex workers, and all that general thing. So
yeah, and I want to. It's very easy to feel hopeless with this kind of stuff, but like we've beaten legislation like this before. Like,
absolutely.
I one of my formative childhood experiences was when we beat SOPA and PIPA. Like, we can beat them. It takes a lot, takes a lot of mobilization, but yeah, like I know we can beat this because we've beaten things like it before.
Agreed. All right, that does it for us today. If you want to find us on a currently more secure than what it could be internet, you can follow us on Twitter at Cool Zone Media and Happen Here Pod. I think apparently Instagram too. So that's cool if you're an Instagram person. Good for you, because Twitter is bad. You can find me on Twitter at Hungry Bowtie.
You can find me at CHR3.
You can indeed. Yeah. That does it for us. Encryption. Hey.
Hey there, I'm Jess.
Milady Confetti here.
Hi, I'm Psyche.
And I'm Hey Shady Lady.
And welcome to Boss Level,
a podcast where we feature conversations with guests who have leveled up, bringing an XP boost to the table.
That was always my response, was like, I am like a unicorn here, right? Like, because there's not a lot of like out of the closet female gamers. It's not to say there's not female gamers. I know a lot of them. There's a lot. But like, it was like a battlefield. They're like, this is our cool boys club and you can't be here. And I'm like, no, sorry, honey. This is a very dark corner and I'm a lot of light and I'm coming right into this corner. Hi.
We pick the brains of professionals, creators, and bosses in industries across the globe to help our listeners achieve their own boss level.
We are not just creating a podcast, but a gamified and engaged community.
Listen to Boss Level on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And we're live here outside the Perez family home, just waiting for the... And there they go, almost on time this morning. Mom is coming out the front door strong with a double-arm kid carry. Looks like Dad has the bags. Daughter is bringing up the rear. Oh, but the diaper bag wasn't closed. Diapers and toys are everywhere. Ooh, but Mom has just nailed the perfect car seat buckle for the toddler. And now the eldest daughter, who looks to be about 9 or 10, has secured herself in the booster seat. Dad zips the bag closed, and they're off. But looks like Mom doesn't realize her coffee cup is still on the roof of the car. And there it goes. Oh, that's a shame. That mug was a fam favorite.
Don't sweat the small stuff. Just nail the big stuff. Like making sure your kids are buckled correctly in the right seat for their age and size. Learn more at nhtsa.gov/the right seat.
Visit nhtsa.gov/the right seat.
Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
From Cavalry Audio, the studio that brought you The Devil Within and The Shadow Girls, comes a new true crime podcast, The Pink Moon Murders.
The local sheriff believes there may be more than one killer. It's been 4 days since those bodies were found, and there's no arrest as of this morning.
They were afraid, especially out in that area. What if they come back or whatever?
It scared me to death. Like, it scared me. I was very, very intimidated to live here.
Crazy to think you go to sleep one night, maybe snuggling with your loved one, and never wake up. Or maybe you wake up in a struggle for your life, which you lose.
Join host David Ratterman as he explores one fateful night when evil descended upon small-town Ohio.
Killed 8 members of an Ohio family in a pre-planned execution.
A family was targeted, most of them targeted while they were sleeping.
Follow The Pink Moon Murders on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey everybody, Robert Evans here. Obviously, as I'm sure everyone is being bombarded with, the war in Ukraine is in its 5th day right now, something like that. We just passed 96 hours. By some accounts, more than 300,000 people have been made refugees. Those are going to be very inexact numbers, but it's likely to be somewhere between like 50 and 100,000 people per day being made refugees, and it's possible that's going to last for the foreseeable future. Much of the coverage that you will have seen at this point is going to focus on heroic pieces of resistance, things that Ukrainian civilians picking up arms, throwing Molotov cocktails, Ukrainian soldiers destroying Russian armored columns. Some of that's going to be propaganda. Some of that, a decent amount of that's actually happening, obviously. We have a fair amount of documentation. But what I think has not gotten nearly as much play is the situation at the border of Ukraine and Poland. Because this refugee crisis is enormous, but it's also not sexy. And it points to a number of things that are ugly about some of the stuff that people like to celebrate of this conflict, including the conduct of President Zelensky, who has, I think, handled himself objectively well as a wartime leader, and who has also, as you'll hear in the interview that's about to follow, made some decisions that have had a catastrophic impact on people's lives. So this is an interview conducted by a journalist, James Stout, who is working with us on this project and with another project that I'll be launching soon, with a person, an individual, an American who was, has a couple of different passports, but with a person who was in Ukraine when the invasion began and left and eventually wound up leaving on foot with tens of thousands of other people for the Polish border. So this is a story of what it is like to flee a country at the beginning of a war, and the realities that increasing numbers of Ukrainians are going to be facing every single day. So please listen.
Hi there.
Hey, Manny, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good. Sorry to keep you up late. I'm sure you're exhausted.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I actually just arrived at a new hostel in a new city, and I'm going to be up for a couple more hours anyway, so it's a good time to talk.
Nice, great. Do you mind if I record this?
Go ahead.
Cool, excellent. Let me just explain what we're going to do. So I'm writing a piece for NBC on the refugee situation that's emerging, and then I'm also helping to make a podcast for iHeartRadio about a similar thing. So if it's okay with you, we'll use the audio for one, and then some of your words for another.
Absolutely. How is my audio coming through?
It's great, actually. It's really, really good. Are you on a telephone or are you on a computer?
I'm on a telephone right now. I don't have a computer with me.
Cool. No, you're doing really well. If you're on a computer, I'd ask you to record a backup, but this is just fine. I'm recording. So yeah, it seems like you've had a pretty exhausting 48 hours now. So if we go back to when you were in Kyiv, right?
So I was in Kyiv a few days ago. I was in Kyiv 8 days ago. And then I went to Lviv 4 days ago.
Okay. And how long had you been in Ukraine?
I've been in Ukraine, or I had been in Ukraine in total for 1 week.
Okay, so yeah, not that long. And you arrived in Kyiv, you went to Lviv. Can you remember like where you were when you found out that the invasion was happening and that it was going to go past Donbass and into Ukraine?
Yeah, of course. So I woke up on the morning of 24 February to the sound of air raid sirens outside, and it was a very confusing sound. I had never heard air raid sirens in real life. I just heard them in movies and television shows and such, and I knew immediately what had happened. I didn't even have to check the news. And I did check the news soon afterward, and there were bombings all over the country. There were reports of bombings in Ivano-Frankivsk, which is a city 100 kilometers south of Lviv, where I was. And there were so many rumors flying around. There were rumors that the Russians were coming to Lviv at that moment, which was not the case, but can still be the case very soon. Anyway, so I heard these air raid sirens as I woke up, and I shook awake my roommate, who's a British journalist, and I told him we might be bombed any minute. So we went outside to try and find a shelter. Pretty much still in our night clothes, we went outside to try and find a shelter. And there were loudspeakers saying, everybody remain calm, find shelter, help the elderly, stockpile water. And it was repeating this on repeat. And people were shuffling along. There was a sense of muted panic. So it wasn't outright panic, but it was a sense of urgency, I guess you could call it. And we were at war. And that was when I realized that Ukraine was being invaded at that very moment.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds dramatic. And at that point, you went to the shelter, I'm guessing. So did you spend some time there before making the decision to head to Poland?
So after about 15 minutes, the air raid sirens stopped. The news generally came around the city that Lviv was not about to be bombed, but nevertheless, a massive exodus of people began from Lviv at that moment because, okay, we're safe for now, but for how long are we safe? Was the general sentiment that was around. So everybody just started making for the train station, the bus station. They got in their cars. People were just leaving. There were huge lines at the ATMs. There were huge lines at the grocery stores. People were buying non-perishables. It was just not a panic full out, I would call it, but it was an urgent departure. It was an urgent exodus that was happening. And so me and my roommate, we went to the train station, waited in line for 2 hours to see if there were tickets. There were no tickets. We went to the bus station. We waited in line for 1 hour to see if there were tickets. There were no tickets. And so then we started to get a little worried because it was noon on the day of the invasion. Russian forces were everywhere in the country. There were bombings everywhere in the country. And we had to leave. And there was no viable means to leave. The airport was closed, of course. The airport was being bombed a few hours later. And so we tried to look into car hire. We tried to see if we could rent a car. We tried to see if we could take an Uber or a Lyft or a BlaBlaCar, which is the Ukrainian version of Uber. And none of those options were available because everybody was thinking the same thing. And in a sense of almost resigned despair, we decided that it would be best to just start walking west and see what happened. And it was around noon when we began to walk west.
Wow.
Go ahead.
So when you set off to walk, did you just sort of take what you could carry, and was that sort of what most people were doing, or did you get the sense that at least the people were like preparing for a long period of time away when they left?
The people certainly were not preparing for a long period of time away. The people were not preparing for war. For the longest time, President Zelensky and the Ukrainian government maintained that there would be no war. They called indications of war alarmist. They called them ludicrous. And it was only in the final 24 hours that everybody sort of woke up and said there's going to be a war. So I remember the last day before the invasion, people were getting ready. People were waiting at the ATMs. People were buying groceries. People were packing. But it was not before that time. Nobody was getting ready for the war. And so when the war struck, everybody everybody just sort of left hastily, and it was a terrifying departure, a sudden and terrifying departure, because people didn't know what to do, and they just sort of grabbed what they had and they ran. Luckily for me and my roommate, we were traveling with just one pack or so, because we were not living in Ukraine, and so we were able to just carry what we had on our backs.
Yeah. So talk me through that walk then. It's I think I saw it's like 43 miles. Is that right?
That's right. So we did take a municipal bus a little bit of the way. We took a municipal bus. I believe it was 5 kilometers down the road. 5 kilometers being like 3 miles down the road. And the total distance from Lviv to the border is 80 kilometers. Sorry, 80 kilometers. So that really did not make a dent at all in the distance. And it was noon when we started, and we knew for a fact that that we would not make it before nightfall, and we knew that, and we were terrified of that. So at first we walked along. The countryside was picturesque. It was beautiful. It was indistinguishable from a holiday during springtime. It was a fair weather. It was sunny, and no one could even tell that the nation was at war. There was really nobody else walking on the road besides us in the beginning, in the first 20 kilometers, I would say. And then we started seeing long lines at the petrol stations. Everywhere was out of gas. Nobody had gas. There was just no ability to fuel cars, and as a consequence of that, cars were running out of gas and they were being abandoned on the side of the road, which caused further traffic pileups, and soon the road was impenetrable to vehicles. And so because of this, everybody started getting out of their cars and walking. And so these families who had planned to escape Ukraine to Poland in their cars and carry their lives with them were suddenly faced with the hard decision of taking what they could carry with them.
Yeah, that just sounds terrible. That sounds really difficult. I'm sure you saw like older folks and younger people as well, with people sort of struggling to because that's a long walk, right? That's not a walk that everyone can do. So that must have been very difficult.
It's a difficult walk for a young man, and many old women and little children under the age of 5 were forced on this march because there really was no other option for them. It was either go back to Ukraine and risk being bombed, risk being under Russian occupation, or it was get out of your car and walk in the wintertime with no food or water, no toilet, for 50 miles. And it was just this nightmare scenario because all these people were on the road. There were people in wheelchairs who couldn't negotiate the mud. There were mothers with strollers who couldn't get the children out, and the children were crying. And the children were asking, "Why are we here? What are we doing? Why did we have to leave home and stand and walk 50 miles in the middle of winter?" And the old people were sort of resigned to it. There was one old woman I passed who was using a cane, and she was hobbling along. She had a backpack, and I asked her, "Where are you going?" Because we were a long, long way from the border. And she said, "I'm going to Poland." Very simply. It was a very matter-of-fact statement. And so these people walked with a sense of duty and a sense of urgency, and it was just a very tragic humanitarian scene.
Yeah, I can imagine. And that was a major route that you were on, right? Like a major road that just became impassable.
It wasn't one of the bigger highways, but it was, I believe, the M11, the Ukrainian M11, and it runs east to west throughout the country. And it's one of the major roads. Okay. Yeah. And it had become completely clogged. Yeah.
Jesus. So on arrival in Poland or at the border, I understand that there's some the men, like broadly defined as like military age, right, 18 to 60, I think, aren't allowed to leave because they have to stay in it and enlist. Is that right? Did you see? Yes,
the border was absolutely the worst part for that reason. About 5 kilometers from the border, at the end of our walk, we were feeling relieved. We were feeling like finally we've made it. Ukrainian military patrols started walking by and driving by, and announcing through loudspeakers and announcing with their own voices, all men must stay. All men between the ages of 18 and 60 have to stay, get out of line now. And so the fathers naturally asked, because there were a lot of fathers who were there to protect their families, to safeguard their families, and to provide for their families. These fathers asked, how about us? We have little children. We have children under the age of 5. How are we supposed to provide for them if you conscript us right here? The Ukrainian army did not care. they pulled them away physically from their families. Wow. There were a lot of tears. There was a lot of crying. There were a lot of hurried goodbyes. Brothers left sisters. Mothers left husbands. Lovers left each other. People just left. It was terrifying to watch. All these men were conscripted immediately into the army.
Yeah, I can imagine. And were people at that point, like, it seems like they were relatively stoic up to that point. Were people sort of resisting that? Like, just were they like sort of sad but resigned to it? Was it a mixture of
that? Was when the panic began, because everybody was sad but resigned to their fate of walking to Poland, but nobody was prepared for losing all the men.
Yeah.
So when all the men were lost, when all the men were taken forcibly, and this was public, everybody could see these men being yanked from their families. People first started yelling at the soldiers. That didn't do anything, obviously, and they were so angry at the soldiers, and the soldiers didn't care. And then panic began because people realized, oh my God, this person who was here with us, who was our travel companion, who's our relative, now we have to leave without him. And even more, he's going to the front now, and he is in great danger at the front. So people began pushing, they began shoving, they began being rude to one another. There was no sense of empathy among the people at all because it was a panic to get across the border at that point. Right. So there were people fainting, and that was really just overlooked. The people who fainted were sort of dragged to the side and left there. And I think they made it out. I don't know if they made it out okay. They certainly didn't die. But there were people who were fainting. There were people who were sobbing. There were people who were hyperventilating. There was vomiting going on. It was just this sense of absolute human panic as people just tried to escape in the last 5 kilometers, and especially in the last 500 meters was the very worst.
Wow.
So,
yeah, terrible thing to see. I understand you stayed in touch with one of the lads who was conscripted, right? Have you heard any more from him?
Yes, that was a development from tonight.
Tell me about that.
So while we were walking, this was about 15 kilometers out from the border, we met a young Ukrainian man. And we just got to talking to him because, I mean, we could relate to him. I'm about the same age as him. And so we were just like sort of talking about our lives, and it was almost as if the war wasn't going on. And then we got to these army checkpoints, and they started calling all the men, you have to leave. And so my friend said, oh, I'm not leaving. I don't want to fight in this war. And he tried to, sort of, stay with us because we were foreigners. We were not eligible to be conscripted. Right. So he sort of tried to stay with us. He was a student. He was trying not to fight in this war because he had a life elsewhere. He had a girlfriend who he was traveling with. And so we were walking with him, and I said, hey, do you want to do an interview? He said, sure. And I started talking to him on camera, and then a soldier came by and yelled in his direction, hey, you, get out of line. And he said, I'm sorry, I have to go. And he just gave me this look, like this despairing look, and he went with the soldier. So 2 days later, tonight, he messaged me on Instagram, and he said, because we had exchanged contact information while we were talking. He messaged me on Instagram, and he said, hey, I saw that you mentioned me in your Twitter, because I told him about the Twitter as well. And he said, just letting you know, I'm safe in Lviv. I'm not in the east fighting the Russians. I am in Lviv, and I am safe. And it is my knowledge that he may have escaped conscription because he would otherwise be in the east. But I'm not sure. I just know that he is safe right now, and he confirmed that he was safe.
Okay.
So
you're not sure whether he's sort of doing training or whether he's in some rear echelon role, or if he's managed to get out of it somehow.
I know that he has managed to escape the brunt of the fighting with the Russians. That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, good for him, but still a terrible thing to have to deal with. So, it's my understanding, there's visa-free entry into Poland right now, is that right? That people can walk across the border?
Yes. The entry into Poland was an absolute breeze compared to the exit from Ukraine. I don't know why, but you have to wait in a long line in Ukraine for an exit visa, just for permission to leave the country. And so, as I mentioned, that was the worst part because they were only letting 10 people out every 20 minutes. 10 people get an exit visa every 20 minutes, and there were at least 2,000 people at the border with us.
Wow.
And so that's where this panic happened, is because every time they opened that gate, every 20 minutes, and by the way, this is like 2 a.m. in the cold weather, and people are, as I mentioned, crying, vomiting, fainting. And so every time they opened that gate, there was a human crush to get to that gate, and they closed it and they forced the people back. And then it was another 20 minutes before it happened again. And this happened all night long. And this was literally just to get permission to exit the country. It was ludicrous. It was insane. So yeah, I'm sorry to divert from your question, but
no, it's very interesting.
Poland was extremely easy to enter. There was no visa process. They understood. They let us through. I think they just barely looked at our passports. So yeah, it was easy.
Were you at that point, like, obviously you had no plans or places to go, so like, did they house you? Was there some kind of refugee housing that they put you in?
Not when I was there. They did do that. They did implement that about 12 hours after I arrived. But when I arrived, we were greeted immediately, pretty much right out of the border facility, with donuts and tea. And so they gave us donuts, they gave us tea. And then they said, hey, there's a bus to Przemyśl, which is the city about 15 kilometers west of the border, where all the refugees are gathering. And they said, there's a bus to Przemyśl, leaves every 15 minutes. And we got on that bus. And then we arrived in Przemyśl. And at that time, refugees were responsible for their own accommodation. We managed to book a room in a hotel with 8 other refugees in the room. And so I was sleeping in this room with 8 other refugees. They didn't want to talk to me. They were kind of despondent. They'd lost everything. And so they were just very sad the entire time that I was there.
Yeah.
But to answer your question about housing real quick, about 12 hours after we arrived, they began setting up tents for the refugees. And that is where many of the refugees are living now, are in tents.
Okay. Do you know if that's a Polish government or the Red Cross, or is that citizens of Poland?
I have no idea which organization did that, but I can tell you that I did not see a single Red Cross or United Nations representative while I was in Poland.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, they can be sometimes a little slow to react.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so you then stayed in that hostel. You weren't able to really talk to the people there, which is understandable. They probably had a very, very difficult 24 hours.
We all had, yeah. So yeah. No talking was being had, pretty much.
Did you get a sense as you met the people walking there, crossing the border, etc., did they have plans to be gone from Ukraine? Were they thinking, where can I stay for a long period of time? Were they thinking, I'm going to wait this out in Poland and see?
Right. I was pleasantly surprised that a good half of the people that I spoke to in that convoy, in that refugee caravan, had relatives either in Poland or elsewhere in Europe. And so they had all called their relatives, and they had arranged them to go to Western Europe and meet their relatives.
Okay. Yeah. So they've got a place they're planning to at least stay for a while.
However, another half of them have no plans whatsoever, and they're terrified. And those are the refugees that I stayed with in that hotel last night, that they're terrified and they have no place to go.
Yeah. Right. And no one's really provided them with one yet.
No.
Yeah, that's difficult, and it seems like, I don't know, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the United States reacts, because it hasn't really done very much so far.
It's amazing. I heard that the reason I crossed at that place rather than any other place is that I heard that the U.S. Army was there, and I did not see the U.S. Army. I searched for them, and I did not find them. So I don't know where the U.S. is.
Okay. Yeah, you haven't seen any evidence of seems like no sort of NGOs or government sort of aid for refugees yet then.
It's kind of surprising. As I mentioned, I haven't seen any UN representative, any Red Cross representative, any WHO representative. I haven't seen any NGO or governmental representatives. I did see, of course, Polish government representatives at the border, but that was about it.
Right. Is there, from Polish people, do you get a sense of sort of solidarity?
Yes.
Okay, good. Talk about how people received you.
So it was actually amazing to see. It was heartwarming to see the citizens of Przemyśl are now swamped. Their population has been doubled or tripled by the incoming Ukrainian refugees. And yet they are showing great amounts of solidarity. I actually attended a solidarity rally today where the citizens of Przemyśl got together and they said, Ukraine are our brothers and Putin is clearly in the wrong. and we will stand with them. We will show solidarity with them. And that was heartwarming to see. I talked with a few of those Poles at that rally, and they said, yeah, we knew this was coming, and we prepared for it, and we are ready to take in as many as is necessary.
Yeah, that's really nice to hear, actually, that these people are sort of showing solidarity with each other and support with each other. And,
yes.
Yeah. So when you were on your way west, I presume that like the conflict didn't catch up with you, right? You weren't sort of subject to like indirect fire, or you didn't see any of that.
No. However, there was about 50 kilometers behind us a bombing, as I mentioned. We did not hear it, but there were reports of the fighting going on all the time. But it did not catch up to us while we were in that. While we were in that caravan. And it would have been absolutely terrifying if it had, but I'm glad that it didn't.
Right, yeah. And then, so you've been there for about a week. Had you previously been doing some reporting in Ukraine?
I've never done reporting in Ukraine before, but when I came to Ukraine and the war had not yet started, I was mostly just doing interviews with civilians about what they thought about the possibility of war, about what they thought about the war in Donbass. A lot of cultural stuff. It was kind of boring. I mean, not that war is interesting or fun, but it was not really much of a story. So I was just doing interviews with people about basic Ukrainian things, and then the war found us. So
right, and it seemed to have come as much of a shock to them as it did to the rest of us.
As I mentioned, nobody was prepared for war until about 24 hours before it hit. And that's when the Ukrainian government said, yes, there will be a war. And everybody began sort of to have a sense of urgency about them.
Right. Did you see any of the like citizen militias and citizens preparing for defense, like the people who decided to stay?
Yes. I didn't see any of the militias, but I went into a Ukrainian gun shop in Kyiv. And there was a line almost out the door. People were buying guns. And I asked one of the people in the line, why are you buying a gun? And he said, if the Russians come, I want to be prepared. So a lot of people are buying guns privately in Kyiv, at least as of last week.
Okay, so they weren't waiting for the government to supply them. They were supplying themselves with guns.
I believe the government supply was a rather sudden decision. I don't think the Ukrainian people were counting on it, and so they were supplying themselves.
Right. And they're buying like Kalashnikov sort of rifles, or like we talk about hunting rifles. And...
yeah, you can't buy Kalashnikovs in a gun store. They were buying sort of hunting rifles and shotguns.
Jesus. Okay. Yeah. Fairly under-equipped. All right. So they were just prepared to try to get anything they could get their hands on to look after themselves and their families.
That's right. Yeah. I bought pepper spray.
Yeah, better than nothing.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, there was. Did you see like of the people you walked with? Did families tend to leave as a whole, or did some folks sort of say, right, I'm going to stay behind and fight, or I'm going to stay behind to stay and look after our house, and you should leave? Did you get a sense of that?
The vast majority of people traveling were families as a whole. There were very few single travelers or partial families traveling. I think that people wanted to stick together, and so it was the vast majority of people traveling were families.
Okay. Yeah. So they all stayed or left. Do you get a sense of how many people? You said about 2,000 people were there at the border. Like, of what proportion of the city decided to leave for Poland?
Not all the people at the border were from Lviv. A lot of them have been traveling since that morning from Kyiv and other cities in central Western Ukraine. So yeah, I was talking to people at the border, and a lot of them were from Kyiv. A lot of them were from Zaporizhzhia. I'm pronouncing that wrong. A lot of them were from Ternopil or Ivano-Frankivsk or Odessa. And so I would not have any sort of conjecture on what percentage of the city. Also, it was still pretty early in the crisis because it was still the first day, and it was fewer than 24 hours after the invasion began. So I imagine the numbers are a lot higher now.
When you were getting news, right, as you were traveling, etc., were you like on WhatsApp, or were people on Twitter? Like, how were they getting news of what was happening?
Everybody, and absolutely everybody, was completely dark during the walk because I don't know why, but there was no sense of cell reception. There was no sense of data reception. There was no sense of internet connection at all during the walk. Oh, wow. And so everybody I met, we asked everybody we met, do you have any news? And they said, no. Do you have any news? So nobody had any news until we got to the border. Some people had news. but for about 16 hours, we were completely in the dark about what was going on. And that was terrifying because when we left, the invasion had just begun, and we didn't get to be updated on the first half day of it. So,
right.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, and then on arrival, you're faced with this news of this, like, sort of blitzkrieg almost, right? Of bombing and armor.
Right. Yes. I mean, we saw a little bit of it in the morning that day, when we started out. But it had really accelerated and amplified by the time that we arrived. And the Ukrainians were absolutely terrified of this because they did not realize it would happen on such a large scale.
Yeah, I think very few people did. And yeah, I can imagine if it's in your own country, it's petrifying. Were you there when the fighting began in the Chernobyl exclusion zone, or were you in Poland by then?
When did the fighting begin in Chernobyl?
I believe about 24 hours after the fighting began, like, period.
I was crossing into Poland 24 hours after the fighting began, period. So I was probably crossing into Poland when that fighting began.
Okay, yeah, I was interested to know, especially how sort of the older people or people who have been alive for, the nuclear accident in Chernobyl. I was wondering how they...
Right. I mean, I've been talking to plenty of older people, and as I mentioned, the older people especially were resigned to this because during the Soviet times, during the Cold War, this sort of thing was common. And so the older people knew what was going on, and the younger people were the ones who were more panicking.
That's interesting. Yeah, they'd been raised with a fear of that, I suppose.
Right, and this happened in 1989 too. This is the biggest refugee crisis since 1989, because in 1989, when all the republics fell in the Warsaw Pact, so many people took to the roads, and so the older people were used to that kind of thing. But as I mentioned, the younger people were not. So
right, yeah, and so sort of different reactions, I guess. And then some very young people, obviously, aren't able to understand what's going on beyond that they're leaving their homes, which is sad.
Right, and especially the little children had no idea what was going on, and it was impossible to explain to them, so nobody did. And so I can't imagine how terrifying this must have been as a child, not knowing why you had to walk dozens of hours in the cold, carrying everything you had.
Yeah, it's always the saddest thing to see children in those refugee situations when they obviously don't know what's going on and didn't do anything wrong. And
right.
Yeah, hopefully they're all safe. Hopefully they're in Poland. Hopefully they can go to safe places.
I made several contacts during this trip, and as I mentioned, only one of them has gotten back to me. So I hope the others get back to me soon.
Yeah, that's tough. But you got the sense that everyone, since they weren't turned back per se, they just might be sort of not in touch because their phones aren't charged or something like that.
It's either their phones aren't charged, or if in the men's case they were sent to the east, or they're too busy trying to arrange accommodations or food for themselves or something. I mean, everybody was just very busy trying to survive.
Yeah.
So I don't blame them if they don't hop on social media and get me.
Yeah, of course. And of course, it's a very, very stressful time for everyone. Did you hear of anyone who has been sent to the east, either secondhand or like through people you met, people who are at the front already?
I do not have any contacts of anybody who was sent to the east. From what I understand, the Ukrainian army has a strict communication, social media sort of policy. And so none of the soldiers that I met, one, wanted to talk to me. I did not talk to any Ukrainian army soldiers in uniform because they had a very strict policy. They could not talk to me. And two, I could not get their contacts for much of the same reason.
Okay, so they didn't want to talk to journalists, didn't want to talk to anyone. They were just looking for...
Yeah, no, they were very stern, and they did not want to talk to anybody. So I talked to 0 soldiers in uniform during this experience.
Okay, yeah. So where are you now? You've gone further west, is that right?
That's right. I took a long bus ride to Krakow today, and so I'm now in Krakow, Poland.
Oh, okay. How are folks dealing? Is it different there, being that little bit more distant?
I've already talked to a few people, and it's a Saturday night. They're going out to drink, and they're saying, well, yeah, it's terrible that this war is happening 250 miles east of us, but what are we supposed to do about it? So they're going out and drinking. So it's this very detached sense here in Krakow, not the same as it was in Freshnadil.
Yeah, interesting. So people are living their normal lives, and it's a news item for them. They're not worried about any potential spillover or fallout.
Right.
Okay. Yeah,
they're not worried.
Nice. And do you plan to stay there? What's next for you?
So I actually just booked a flight an hour ago. I'm going to be flying back to the States on March the 1st.
Okay, great. Yeah, so you can come back, and presumably you're you're a U.S. passport holder, so you could just that's how you got through not being conscripted, etc.
I'm not carrying a U.S. passport right now. Okay. I'm carrying an Italian passport because I'm also a citizen of Italy, and I was told before I left by some friends in the intelligence community that it would look significantly less suspicious to carry an EU passport than a US passport. So I bought the EU passport.
Nice, yeah. And then you can travel freely through the EU.
Yes, through Schengen, yeah.
Yeah. Do you know if Ukrainian people can travel once they're in Poland, can they then move through the Schengen zone freely?
Ukraine is not a member of the EU. They're not a member of Schengen. I do not believe they can move freely.
Right. I was just wondering, it would be. I don't know how their passports would be checked if they're going across some of those land borders, but I think I
do know that it was an emergency situation yesterday, and so that's why they were just very cursorily checked. But I'm sure it's stricter usually.
Yeah, I wonder what that'll be like if they tried to exit Poland, or if they'll.
Right. Yeah. I don't know what's going to happen to them.
No, I don't think. I'm guessing there's been no communication of that you've seen either, right? Like of what they should do or how to apply for asylum or anything like that.
I have talked to a few people. They say that they're banking on these countries being empathetic to refugees. And I understand. I think that countries will be empathetic to refugees.
Mm-hmm. Hi, this is Jill Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And I just sat down with a Minnie Driver.
The Irish traveller said when I was 16, you're going to have a terrible time with men.
Actor, storyteller, and unapologetic Aquarian visionary. Aquarius is all about freedom loving and different perspectives. And I find a lot of people with strong placements in Aquarius are misunderstood. A Sun and Venus in Aquarius in her 7th house spark her unconventional approach to partnership.
He really has taught me to embrace people sleeping in different rooms, on different houses, in different places, but just an embracing of the isness of it all.
If you're navigating your own transformation or just want a chart side view into how a leading artist integrates astrology, creativity, and real life, this episode is a must listen. Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
What if mind control is real?
If you could control the behavior of anybody around you, what kind of life would you have?
Can you hypnotically persuade someone to buy a car?
When you look at your car, you're going to become overwhelmed with such good feelings.
Can you hypnotize someone into sleeping with you?
I gave her some suggestions to be sexually aroused.
Can you get someone to join your cult?
NLP was used on me to access my subconscious.
NLP, aka Neuro-Linguistic Programming, is a blend of hypnosis, linguistics, and psychology. Fans say it's like finally getting a user manual for your brain.
It's about engineering consciousness.
Mind Games is the story of NLP. Its crazy cast of disciples and the fake doctor who invented it at a New Age commune and sold it to guys in suits. He stood trial for murder and got acquitted. The biggest mind game of all? NLP might actually work. This is wild. Listen to Mind Games on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
What do you do when the headlines don't explain what's happening inside of you? I'm Ben Higgins, and If You Can Hear Me is where culture meets the soul, a place for real conversation. Each episode, I sit down with people from all walks of life, celebrities, thinkers, and everyday folks, and we go deeper than the polished story. We talk about what drives us, what shapes us, and what gives us hope. We get honest about the big stuff: identity when you don't recognize yourself anymore, loss that changes you, purpose when success isn't enough, peace when your mind won't slow down, faith when it's complicated. Some guests have answers. Most are still figuring it out. If you've ever felt like there has to be more to the story, this show is for you. Listen to If You Can Hear Me on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
China's Ministry of State Security is one of the most mysterious and powerful spy agencies in the world. But in 2017, the FBI got inside.
This is Special Agent Regal, Special Agent Bradley Hall.
This MSS officer has no idea the U.S. government is onto him. But the FBI has his chats, texts, emails, even his personal diary. Hear how they got it on the 6th Bureau podcast.
I now have several terabytes of an MSS officer, no doubt, no question, of his life. And that's a unicorn.
No one had ever seen anything like that. It was unbelievable.
This is a story of the inner workings of the MSS and how one man's ambition and mistakes opened its vault of secrets.
Listen to the 6th Bureau on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, you certainly hope they will. So they're just going to hope that those countries, the ones who don't have a country to go to, you get the sense that, that they'll apply for asylum wherever they can find a safe place.
That's right. And I believe that countries, Western European countries that have been very vocally pro-Ukraine recently, will take them in. So I think that they'll be safe.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I know I've seen estimates of up to 5 million refugees, which would be, Germany absorbed 1 million people from Syria, right? It's not impossible for Western European countries to do that at all. But it
would still be a catastrophic crisis, the worst since 1989.
Yeah, so. And we have to hope it doesn't get to that. Do you get the sense people are still flowing across the border? I know you're a bit distinct from it now.
I mean, it's weird because you want to believe that what you experienced and what the people around you experienced was a one-time thing, that it was a one-time incident, that it was one caravan. But this is happening constantly, and it will continue to happen constantly for weeks.
Yeah. Are there trains that across the border, things like that people can take, or is it solely that?
Yes. So when I said that I went to the train station in Lviv and there were no trains, what was really happening is, yes, there were trains, but all the trains until March were booked. So.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, but people can take those trains across, that kind of thing.
If they try to book right now, they won't be able to find a booking for a while.
Okay. So they're already booked up.
And by the way, here in Krakow, the first 2 hostels that I went to, the first 2 places to stay that I went to, were all booked up. And I asked why, and they said Ukrainian refugees. So there are Ukrainian refugees here in Krakow.
Okay. Yeah, people are moving further. I'm sure a lot of people want to get as far away as they can.
Yeah, so people are just constantly moving west right now.
Yeah, or they have friends or family that they're trying to get to or whatever. Okay,
yes. Yeah. And I've been hearing the Ukrainian language just constantly on my trip. So
that's interesting too. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for that. That's a really, really interesting insight. Is there anything else you think from your experience that people ought to hear about?
No, I believe I've told you everything. I've retold the story dozens of times since it happened, and I really hope that I hit all the right notes here. If you had to tell anything to the people who were reading or listening to this, Ukraine really needs weapons, yes, but they also need humanitarian aid. When I was walking all that distance with all those people, there was not a single sense of food being provided to anyone, water being provided to anyone. There was no chance to go to the toilet. There was often no chance to sit down. If we could give even a chance for these people to eat something, to drink something, to have a minute of solace, that would mean the world to them. And so I think that we need to provide humanitarian aid to the refugees as soon as possible.
Yeah. And you said you didn't see any organizations that you'd suggest people donate to? Like you didn't see any of that? Is there anyone you can recommend?
And I don't know. I haven't actually done the research into that. I probably should. But I know that the Welcome Committee in Poland were private citizens. They were not part of any NGO or anything. They were private citizens who were welcoming us in.
Yeah, I've seen some of them organizing on Facebook, so I'll try and maybe link to some of those or something like that so people can support.
Right, yeah, we'll see.
All right, and then is there anything like you'd like to plug? Like, do you have a Twitter, right? Is there anything else you could tell us what your Twitter is?
So the Twitter that I'm using for this, which you've probably seen, is a temporary one. It was meant only to cover this crisis. I guess my private Twitter, plug that, which is, you've seen that as well, probably.
Yeah.
It's just my name. I guess just plug that. And, thank you for everything.
No, of course. It's Manny Marotta with 2 T's, right?
Yes, Marotta.
Great. Okay, we got that. Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for taking the time to talk. Appreciate you've had a pretty difficult couple of days, so get some rest. And if there's anything else, any developments, please do let me know. Give me a shout.
Stellar, thank you.
All right, cheers, mate. You have a good evening.
Hey everyone, it's Bobbi Brown. You might know me as the makeup artist, beauty expert. You might also know me as the founder of Jones Road Beauty. But today I'm here with a brand new podcast, The Important Things. On this new podcast, I'll be joined by my co-host and dear friend, international best-selling author, attorney, and TED Talk alum, Anjali Kumar. Together, we want to answer the question, how can you lead a life of fulfillment?
The ongoing pandemic has given us all the opportunity to examine what really matters most to us and what brings us true contentment. Each week, through candid conversations with friends, thought leaders, creators, and entrepreneurs, Bobbi and I are looking for ways we can all learn to live more authentic, gratifying lives. You can look forward to learning from our amazing guests, including the incomparable Gloria Steinem, entrepreneur and designer Jennifer Fisher, Senator Cory Booker, charity founder Christy Turlington Burns, and many, many more. So join us every other week as we dig deep into the stuff that really matters on The Important Things. Listen to The Important Things on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
If I could be you.
And you could be me for just 1 hour.
If you could find a way
to get inside each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Hello, I'm Stacey Wilson Hunt, your host for Inventing Anna, the official podcast. From Shonda Rhimes and the creators at Shondaland, Inventing Anna tells the story of a young woman who charmed her way into the pocketbooks of New York's elite.
Was she gonna take off with that $20 million from the banks, or was she gonna pour it into this foundation?
You know, people look at Anna and see what they want to see.
On this podcast, you'll get VIP access to the real people who inspired the television series and to the actors and creatives like showrunner Shonda Rhimes who brought them to life.
We were working on the show while the trial was going on. I remember doing a dramatic reading of Todd's opening statement for the writer's room.
Who is the fake heiress, Anna Delvey? Join us as we unravel the stories behind the story.
Everything's true until it's not, basically, in Anna's world.
Listen to Inventing Anna, the official podcast, every Wednesday on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
That's the thing. Just take photos of his children walking into the door of their public school.
Yeah.
Send them to him with a Proton Mail account.
Yeah.
Don't let him know what he did to provoke this. Just frighten him.
I do like that all this is being recorded.
Yeah. That's how you do it. The episode's begun. We're including all of that, Sophie. All of that. Welcome to It Could Happen Here, the podcast where we will take pictures of your children entering a public school and send them to you as a threat. But we won't tell you what we're threatening you over, because that's, I don't know what that is. Probably terrorism, technically.
I mean,
Sophie.
Speaking of child abuse.
Yeah. Oh, great. Garrison, very proud. Nailed it.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're doing an episode to talk about the recent kind of letter and opinion piece that the governor of Texas and the attorney general wrote relating to trans kids in Texas. We're also planning like a week long worth of stuff, kind of going into this issue across not just the states, but also like internationally as well, in terms of like the growing kind of war on trans people. But because this thing happened, we do want to kind of talk about it now as well, before we, spend a lot of time making a week-long worth of scripted pieces on it. So anyway, we're going to be talking about what happened last weekend, or last week at time of recording, when the Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton released an opinion piece on, I think it was Monday the 21st, declaring gender-affirming medical care for transgender children to be child abuse. In response, the next day, the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, directed the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services to investigate these practices. And then kind of on that following Wednesday, the letter that Greg Abbott wrote went viral, detailing both the Attorney General's kind of opinion that a number of the so-called, quote, sex change procedures constitute child abuse under existing Texas law, and directing the Family and Protective Services to protect these, to quote unquote, protect these kids from abuse. And I hereby direct your agency to conduct a prompt and thorough investigation to any reported instances of these abusive procedures. And what's really insidious is that, like, it's not even, it's like, of course, like, there is not gender affirming surgery done on minors anyway. That does not happen. But this letter actually does go into, it says according to the Attorney General opinion, it is already against the law to subject Texas children to a wide variety of elective procedures for gender transitioning, including reassignment surgeries that can cause sterilization, removals of otherwise healthy body parts, and administration of puberty-blocking drugs or doses of testosterone or estrogen. So it is also including HRT, including puberty blockers, which again, we already give to cisgender children all the time. Puberty blockers are given to kids who have early onset puberty who are cis, but it's now including puberty blockers inside, like constituting that in and of itself as child abuse, which is kind of an escalation of things that we've seen before. And then it's also talking about how Texas law imposes reporting requirements upon all licensed professionals, including doctors, nurses, teachers, therapists, and provides, criminal penalties for failure to report things. So, like, it is that was the main part of the letter that went viral, detailing the different ways that they're trying to harass, intimidate, and introduce possible legal repercussions to parents and caregivers who support transgender youth inside the state of Texas. Yeah.
It is like the perfect example of the thing these people always do when they make laws based on their bigotry, which is like reflexively make a law based on whatever is like the fucking Twitter talking point that they've been yelling about, and then don't consider all of the different things that it's going to do that have nothing to do with the group of people they're trying to hurt.
Yeah, because in lots of cases, this is just gonna, it's not even gonna, it's gonna impact a lot of like queer people in general, right? Because it's in terms of like reporting things that seem outside the mainstream. So not even necessarily transgender people, not even necessarily queer people as well. Like there's a lot of like, and if definitely when I was growing up, there was a lot of like cis girls who enjoy dressing more like butch or tomboy. There's a whole bunch of stuff that will just affect like kids in general, with all of this reporting and all of this like, and making these like procedures and like hormone treatments, trying to make them seem like they're legal, because again, like the actual Texas law has not changed. This is an opinion piece directing the Child Protective Services to investigate these things. So the actual law in the books hasn't changed. What it has done is caused a whole bunch of like a possible legal danger, and a massive headache, and just a whole bunch of like legal harassment against parents and kids, and that's what it's gonna result in, because it's unclear what the governor's directive is gonna actually practically look like. Because in a tweet on last Tuesday, he said that he's directing the Child Protective Services to enforce this ruling and investigate and refer for prosecution for instances of minors receiving affirming care. And then the Texas Protective Services told Time Magazine on Wednesday that it was going to comply with the governor's directive. But in terms of like directing them for prosecution, there has been like 5 Texas district attorneys, including the DAs of Dallas County and Houston's Travis County. They issued a statement the day after condemning the directive and saying that they plan to enforce the Constitution, their quote unquote, that's what they said, and that they are, quote, deeply disturbed by Governor Abbott's and Attorney General Paxton's cruel directives treating transgender children's access to life-saving, gender-affirming care as child abuse. We will not irrationally and justifiably interfere with medical decisions made between children, their parents, and their medical physicians to ensure the safety of transgender youth, adding that we will not allow the governor or attorney general to disregard Texas children's lives in order to score political points. So in terms of, there's going to be certain parts of the state where even if Protective Services does investigate reports of this, they're not going to get prosecuted. But there will be other parts of the state where they probably will. Because it is just an interpretation of the law, you can still get lots of legal trouble, and it's going to be up to juries and other people to decide on what interpretation of the law is going to be enforced and enacted upon. So you're seeing a lot of people being like, oh no, it's actually okay because the law is not changing. It's just the interpretation. And we're like, well, no, it actually is a big problem. It is and it's not even, it's just the overall, it's saying the things that have been gone unsaid for a long time. It's making the things that everyone kind of assumed or was kind of the unsaid bigotry, putting it into writing and making it concrete. And it's the overall escalation of this thing, which is deeply concerning.
I mean, it's the thing that happened with COVID restrictions, with masks and stuff, where you've got the cities and stuff where you have kind of more rational leadership are saying we're not paying attention to this directive from the governor. We're going to keep letting people mask, or we're not going to let you, go after businesses that require masks. But with the added dimension of rather than it being sort of targeting businesses and schools, it's targeting individuals, and it's allowing individuals to target other individuals like they did with the Texas abortion law.
Yeah. Exactly.
And the primary purpose of this is going to be to basically gradually erode the areas in which trans kids can live in Texas. They'll be able to live in some of the cities for a while at least.
Well, and even in the cities, right? It's so maybe the DA doesn't prosecute, but that doesn't mean that CPS can't investigate you. And that's
going to be a lot of
really traumatic. Yeah,
a lot of legal harassment because DFPS cannot remove any child from their parents or guardians without a court order. And no court in Texas or anywhere in the country has yet found gender affirming care to be considered child abuse. So it has not happened yet, but they sure want it to happen, and these are the next steps that can make it happen, right? They are trying to get there with this these incremental things, starting off with legal interpretations of the law. Eventually, they would want to change the law just to reflect this opinion, right? They want this to happen. They're trying to slowly get at it, and it needs to be pushed back upon because any slow incremental thing that they're going to try to do to make it basically be impossible to live as trans in Texas, and lots of other states as well. It's not just Texas. There's things like this happening across all of the United States, basically, especially portions of the South, and it's. Yeah, it does play into this kind of overall in the past 5 years. Once they lost the gay marriage issue, they're like, okay, the next line of defense for these people is making it be impossible to be trans. So that's the new thing they're going to be really focusing on. And we've seen so many new bills against being trans over the course of the past 5 years. Again, it is more so putting into writing the things that have been always kind of unconscious bigotry or even conscious bigotry, but it's putting that into actual stone and making it cemented. Just at the start of this year, there was new restrictions put in place for Texas's transgender student athletes playing on K through 12 school sports teams. That went into effect on January 18th. It was a House Bill 25, authored by Representative Valerie Swanson. Requires student athletes to complete an interscholastic competition to play on sports teams that correspond with the sex listed on their birth certificate at or near their time of birth. Which means that the legislation went further than the previous rules from the University of Scholastic League, which governs the school sports in Texas, in which the student's gender is determined by their birth certificate, but that can also be legally modified. You can change the sex assigned at birth on your birth certificate. The new ruling is that it needs to be it needs to match the one that it was at or near your time of birth. So again, like they're finding all these little small like things to like pry, that just makes things overall be harder to live in. And at this point, like 10 other states have put in very similar laws relating to school sports and like bathroom bills and yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's the same thing that authoritarians always do, which is they're just kind of edging further and further and continuing to proceed as they do not meet resistance. And the goal is to make it illegal and impossible to exist as a transgender person in society. You know, part of what they're doing with the wording of how this change in Texas has been announced is they're trying to frame being trans as a contagion that threatens children. And step one of that proceeding under the aegis of we are protecting children by making these kind of surgeries and stuff illegal. But the steps beyond that are eventually banning and restricting the ability of trans people to be around children and eventually be in civil society at all because they're a threat to children. That's the logical procession of the arguments that they're making. And I think they're proceeding in a fairly logical way in terms of achieving that as a goal. And they're not going to stop until they are stopped by probably force. If anything stops it at this point, that's what it's going to have to be, because the local government has realized that that's how you get elected, because you can't fix the power grid in Texas. You can't provide people with anything that makes their lives easier, but you can hurt trans people. And Republicans are always down with that. It's
the thing fascists do, where they introduce a false crisis. They introduce a false crisis that they can actually take steps to make changes about, but all that ends up doing is hurting more of the population. It doesn't actually solve any issue that actually hurts people. It's one of the core things in the fascist playbook, and it's even in the states where there aren't just like blanket bans on kids being able to participate in sports teams. There's other horrifying things happening. Like in the beginning of February, it came out that the Utah Republicans proposed a commission to analyze trans kids' bodies. Utah Republicans introduced a first-of-its-kind anti-trans sports bill that would form a commission to determine a student-athlete's eligibility on a case-by-case basis. The commission would have authority to establish a baseline range for various attributes, including height, weight, body mass, wingspan, hip-to-knee ratio, and other physical characteristics affected by puberty, barring trans athletes who do not fall within the established limits from participating in gendered sports. Asking like a government-appointed panel to analyze the bodies of trans minors, it does sound like a giant recipe for disaster. And there is some even more like horrifying details. The bill would render the commission, quote, immune from suit, like lawsuits, with respect to all acts done and actions taken in good faith in carrying out their purposes. You can't sue anybody for what happens under the guise of this commission. So they're just going to be investigating trans youth's bodies, and you can't. There's no lawsuits allowed.
That's great. It's let's give the trans child abuse phrenology panel just immunity from lawsuits.
Extend qualified immunity to citizens hurting the group of people that we don't think are human. This isn't the only place we're going to see that logic extended towards.
Nope.
You're already seeing it in places like Louisiana with these bills to make it legal to kill protesters if you feel threatened.
Yep.
It's the same playbook, and it's going to be the same playbook because there's no way to fight it without some sort of force. You can't vote these people away.
Nope.
The courts are packed for the time being. There's not a solution that isn't some kind of force. Now we can discuss, is it like the force of getting the feds to intervene or whatever, but like there's no solution that is just like democratic.
I mean, and like Biden's office made a statement on this recent Texas law opinion interpretation thing, and they're like, yeah, this seems bad. Anyway, good luck. And you're like,
yeah,
oh, cool.
Yeah, it's that meme of like the person drowning with their hand up out of the water,
and they high five you as you're sinking.
High five you as you're sinking. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening.
And I think the situation's it's worse than that too, because in the past couple of weeks, something we started seeing is we started seeing Democratic journalists and Democratic strategists openly talking about how we need to make concessions to the right in the culture war. It's like, okay, well, what does that mean? It's like, yeah, throw trans kids under the bus, right?
Yeah, because they can't vote. They're already freaks. So yeah, they're the easiest person to pick away at the rights for.
Yeah.
And because overall, just in the past year alone, more than 100 bills designed to restrict the rights of transgender people have been introduced in at least 33 states. It's a record-breaking year for anti-trans legislation that has been introduced. In Arkansas, the state legislature recently banned gender-affirming treatment for minors, including hormone therapy, puberty blockers, and similar treatments. Again, this is the thing that that could not happen for a long time anyway, just because culturally and medically doctors would never do that. But now at the point where that is starting to change, it is this reactive effect that people are doing, and be like, now that these cogs are turning, people are putting the massive brakes on it and putting the thing that used to be just unsaid now into actual legal writing. So now this actually is just not allowed, as opposed to it just not happening because doctors were assholes. So yeah, in Arkansas, you can't even receive hormone treatment or puberty blockers. The bill was called the Save Adolescents from Experimentation Act. Yeah, so referring to medical treatment of affirming one's gender identity as experimentation, which is not great. I mean, that is how I view it for myself, because I like being a freak. But as an overall trend, that is horrible. That is a horrible way to phrase this type of thing for a lot of people, especially the people who know specifically what gender they want to be and are that affects them so differently. I mean, I'm lucky enough just to be more gender queerish, but yeah, it's all of these bills are going to affect so many people in different ways, and it's real bad. Shortly after the Arkansas bill prohibiting trans-affirming medical practices was signed into law last April, reports of suicide attempts among trans youth in the state were going up. And the Dr. Michelle Hutchinson, who runs the largest provider of hormone therapy in the state, told the AP that just in her office alone during April, she saw an uptick in suicide attempts from trans youth. And this is it's going to keep happening, and there is you can't trust a law to stop it. The Arkansas governor, Asa Hutchinson, a Republican, did veto this bill, citing potentially dangerous consequences for trans youth, and telling reporters that it was a vast government overreach and a byproduct of the culture war in America. And her veto was vetoed by the state legislature. So it's going to be a looping, endless problem of legal issues. So there's need to be other things. I've been on Twitter the past week, just looking at all the GoFundMes by parents of trans kids in Texas who are trying to move out of state so that their kid can receive hormone treatment and just be allowed to be a person without being harassed by Child Protective Services and teachers and the school system. And it's horrifying, watching all these people asking for help so that they can move out of state, so that they can let their kid be just a kid. And it is really rough.
And a big part of why it's so horrifying is that obviously if you're in that situation, you can get your kid out there, of course, but it also means the more people who move out of places like that, the less resources there will be in the future for kids whose parents can't get them out, and the less support there will be, the less
there is no real escape from it. You cannot get fully away. You cannot ever fully escape that type of fascist thought and creep within the state legislature, and specifically around how it's going to affect different classes of minorities. I will direct people, if you want to kind of learn more about this sort of thing, and if you can find some stuff around. There's an organization in Texas called TENT, which is I just want to make sure I say it right. Oh no, it's the Texas Educational Network, or the Trans Educational Network of Texas. It's one of those, but it has a whole bunch of mental health resources, guides for trans youth in Texas for how to make things slightly less shitty. And yeah, they do some advocacy work in Texas. There's also Equality Texas, which is another organization that does assistance for transgender people, like in schools, and just trying to make life slightly less shitty. I kind of the last thing I wrote is just fix your hearts or die, which is the kind of overall message that you can really only give to people who want to do this type of thing, is that there's really no arguing with them. You have to either they need to fix their hearts or not be around anymore. Like they're just like, whether that be like they're just secluded to your part of society, but it's like it needs to be actually like resisted upon, because these people are never going to back down on their own.
The other part of the problem here again is just with how, this is sort of this is an inherent problem that you have with democracies, right? With democracies and civil rights, where it's, you have a group of people who are an extremely small minority, and this gets compounded by the fact that you're dealing with an extremely small minority of people, and you're already dealing with like the thing that is called democracy, right, is only participated in by an extremely small number of people, especially when you get down to like the state level and the local level, right? Like very few people are actually voting in these things. The people who are voting in these things like want trans people to die. And so, you need some kind of other solution to actually secure civil rights, because there literally are not enough trans people, and there are not enough people who support them and care enough to do it, and also are in these areas to prevent this through just the normal like vote blue. I mean, like I keep seeing this with Texas. Everyone keeps saying it's like, well, okay, we just got to vote blue, and it's like people have been saying this about stuff in Texas for as long as I've been alive. It has never happened, ever. Like it hasn't my entire life. Like they keep saying this, it keeps not happening, and kids keep dying, and there has to be something else, because otherwise
Texas
is going to come back here.
Texas has been laboriously constructed as a political entity to stymie all of your liberal dreams of it going purple, and it will continue to be for the foreseeable future. Like you cannot. This is not a voting issue. This is like I said, some kind of force is going to have to be used to oppose these people. They wouldn't listen if you voted them out.
And they do force, like they themselves do force. You can look at all the stuff they've been doing.
That's what this is force.
Yeah. And even like regular people, like this whole like thing of like, yes, you should like report to your neighbors if you see a kid who doesn't look like a regular, normal, boring cis child, then you should report them. You should go harass everyone who works in your school board so that they ban all books referencing anything related to being queer. It's like they do take steps to actually hurt other individuals. And they can do it through these means that, they don't necessarily have to always punch you in the face, but they can sure direct the state to send agents to your house to intimidate, harass you, and threaten to take away your children. Or they can, if you're a therapist or a teacher, you can be fired or put in jail for failing to report, kids who don't subscribe to their Christian supremacist ideas of like traditional gender roles. Because again, it's not even all. Because like again, there's not tons of trans people in general usually. So like this is just gonna affect a lot of cis kids as well, who maybe don't want to. Who just want to dress cool. Like it's like it doesn't even just like it does affect everybody. So it's a horrible thing that is not even like there's no escape from it, and it will affect you whether or not you're trans or not.
Yeah, like, I think it's important also to talk about the mandatory reporting stuff, because even like, mandatory reporting in general, like even like I've had things where I was in a school and my school essentially turned into a police state because there are people who I couldn't talk to about things because of things that happened to me, that if any of them heard it, and one time someone did, and I had to literally beg them like on my knees not to report me, right? Not to report the thing that happened to me, because if that had been heard, like, and if that had actually been reported, it would have started an enormous process, and I would have had to.
Hi, this is Jo Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And I just sat down with a Minnie Driver.
The Irish traveller said when I was 16, you're going to have a terrible time with men.
Actor, storyteller, and unapologetic Aquarian visionary. Aquarius is all about freedom loving and different perspectives. And I find a lot of people with strong placements in Aquarius are misunderstood. A Sun and Venus in Aquarius in her 7th house spark her unconventional approach to partnership.
He really has taught me to embrace people sleeping in different rooms, on different houses, in different places, but just an embracing of the isness of it all.
If you're navigating your own transformation or just want a chart-side view into how a leading artist integrates astrology, creativity, and real life, this episode is a must listen. Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
What if mind control is real?
If you could control the behavior of anybody around you, what kind of life would you have?
Can you hypnotically persuade someone to buy a car?
When you look at your car, you're going to become overwhelmed with such good feelings.
Can you hypnotize someone into sleeping with you?
I gave her some suggestions to be sexually aroused.
Can you get someone to join your cult?
NLP was used on me to access my subconscious.
NLP, aka Neuro-Linguistic Programming, is a blend of hypnosis, linguistics, and psychology. Fans say it's like finally getting a user manual for your brain.
It's about engineering consciousness.
Mind Games is the story of NLP. Its crazy cast of disciples and the fake doctor who invented it at a New Age commune and sold it to guys in suits. He stood trial for murder and got acquitted. The biggest mind game of all? NLP might actually work.
This is wild.
Listen to Mind Games on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
What do you do when the headlines don't explain what's happening inside of you? I'm Ben Higgins, and If You Can Hear Me is where culture meets the soul, a place for real conversation. Each episode, I sit down with people from all walks of life, celebrities, thinkers, and everyday folks, and we go deeper than the polished story. We talk about what drives us, what shapes us, and what gives us hope. We get honest about the big stuff: identity when you don't recognize yourself anymore, loss that changes you, purpose when success isn't enough, peace when your mind won't slow down, faith when it's complicated. Some guests have answers. Most are still figuring it out. If you've ever felt like there has to be more to the story, this show is for you. Listen to If You Can Hear Me on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
China's Ministry of State Security is one of the most mysterious and powerful spy agencies in the world. But in 2017, the FBI got inside.
This is Special Agent Regal, Special Agent Bradley Hall.
This MSS officer has no idea the U.S. government is onto him. But the FBI has his chats, texts, emails, even his personal diary. Hear how they got it on the Sixth Bureau podcast.
I now have several terabytes of an MSS officer, no doubt, no question, of his life. And that's a unicorn.
No one had ever seen anything like that. It was unbelievable.
This is a story of the inner workings of the MSS and how one man's ambition and mistakes opened its vault of secrets.
Listen to the Sixth Bureau on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I would have had to deal with this this is an institutionalized thing, and that the absolute terror that this kind of stuff creates, where you have to watch every single word that you say around all of the adults in your life, because if you don't do it, they are going to report you. The level of psychological terror you are inflicting on people is horrific. And that in and of itself just is a cost. And it is something that is going to contribute to trans kids killing themselves. And it's just that simple and that bleak.
It is such a life and death issue. So you have to really be forced to go. It goes into it's a very ontological issue as well. And it deals with so many things around the nature of being and what you're allowed to be inside this societal construct. And they're just trying to make that impossible for so many people, and make everything so limited in their very narrow version of what they want the world to be that makes them feel comfortable.
Yeah, and you know, because it's not what the world is, they have to use violence to do it.
Yeah. So because it's stuck, because that is the rule, that is the rules that we're playing by, that is the game we're playing. Yeah, my only the default response to be for those people is they need to fix their hearts or die and just get out of the way. And because they already have that for us, except they don't want us to fix their hearts, they just want us to die. Yeah. So like we are way more empathetic than they are. Because they can just not be transphobic. They can just not do these things. But if they're gonna keep doubling down, then if you want to play by their rules, then we need to start playing by their rules, because they're not gonna have if they're not gonna change the rules, then that is the game that they want us to do. And again, actual like. I always for episodes like this, I always want to kind of end with like, here are some steps that you can like take that are relatively easy, and it's challenging for these types of sorts of things. Like there is things you can do around, you know, making sure you're aware of what bills are being talked about in your local area, contacting representatives to do stuff, going to you know, either whether they're school board meetings or stuff, but like. A lot of the electoralist type of ideas around this feels always so inadequate, and it feels always so fake, that, you know, it feels a lot easier to like, you know, figure out different ways to actually help actual trans people in your area, and give trans people money, and like, because like that is often can be actually have a way more positive effects, at least effects that are like observable. But there are also ways to stop this type of legislation. Like there is ways to do that, and I'll try to get into more of that kind of stuff as well once we get, you know, our week long of stuff about the war on trans people, that will be upcoming probably sometime in this next month.
Yeah. Remember, folks, if anybody ever suggests doing something for children that isn't providing them with food or shelter, you should probably hit that person, because they're probably trying to fuck something up for somebody. It's nearly always. Don't trust anyone who says they need to do something to protect children. That they're lying to you. As a rule, they're lying to you. Anyway, you guys, how's the... Boy, that Star Wars.
Oh yeah, I love when spaceships.
There's the Obi-Wans coming out. That'll be good.
I am excited for the Obi-Wans, because
the Obi-Wans will be good.
Speaking of Ewan McGregor, a few months ago I saw the film Velvet Goldmine, starring Ewan McGregor, which is a wonderful like pseudo-fictional film, but about kind of the glam rock era inside Britain. It's very, very gay. A whole bunch of very good twink action. And there was one scene where Ewan McGregor's character, he's kind of based off one of those types of music people. I forget which one it is. I think Ziggy Pop. People?
Oh,
I think he's playing like a kind of a version of that. But there's one scene where he's doing a performance where he takes all of his clothes off on stage, and you get to see Ewan McGregor's dick. And
what?
Yeah,
Great.
You do. So if people want to see a kind of David Bowie-esque film starring Ewan McGregor, it has like a weird gay emo Christian Bale as a twink, and a whole bunch of other really, really solid twink stuff. I would recommend watching Velvet Goldmine. It has a lot of great stuff, and you do very early in the film get to see Ewan McGregor's penis just flapping around on stage, and it's pretty good. It's
Garrison. Speaking of movies where you see a famous person's dick, if you want to see another famous penis, the movie Galaxy Quest contains several shots of Tim Allen dong. If you want to see Tim Allen's hanging wang, that's...
As someone who's seen both Galaxy Quest and Velvet Goldmine, and who appreciates both films dearly, Ewan McGregor is miles hotter than Tim Allen.
Tim Allen's dong shot is not hot.
It is not pleasing.
It is not supposed to be. He is hungover in his like bathrobe, leaning over, groaning.
But if you want
if you want to see Rainer Fassbender's dick, Germany in Autumn.
Okay, I could do that.
Very weird movie. However,
all
right.
If you, in terms of actionable things to make you feel better, everyone go watch Vela Goldmine because it has some very good gender play. It has wonderful stuff around gender, wonderful stuff around gayness, and the film from like the 90s where there was like lots of gay fucking, and you're like, wow, how was this film made in the 90s? Because it is a whole bunch of like big name actors now who were like unknown at the time, all being gay and fucking each other, and you're like, holy shit.
All right. Well, folks, that is that's what we got. There's your action items.
That's your action item. Go watch Velvet Goldmine. Make everyone you know watch Velvet Goldmine. It'll make you feel good about gender. And
take screen grabs of Ewan McGregor's dick, make burner Twitter accounts, and just start posting. Just get it out there. Get it out there.
The world needs to know.
Throw some of Tim Allen's dick out there too. Don't be choosy. Okay. Stick it all the dicks. All right. Well, that's going to be the day.
That's the show.
On a cold morning in 1977, Sandy Beale was found shot to death in her car.
I was like, there's no way. It's just no way that this could be. Couldn't believe it.
Her death was ruled as suicide, but her family has never bought the official story. Instead, they suspected a cover-up.
I didn't take any of their crap because I could tell that they were hiding something.
My name is Melissa Jeltsin. I'm a reporter who covers violence against women. My new podcast, What Happened to Sandy Beale, takes a closer look at Sandy's mysterious death.
Sandra could have been retired by now. She's doing life 6 feet underground.
Because when Sandy was found dead, it suddenly made a lot of people very nervous.
She had a lot going for her. I can't imagine in 1 year things going that tragically wrong.
Listen to What Happened to Sandy Beale starting March 9th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Look through your children's eyes to see the true magic of a forest. It's a storybook world for them. You look and see a tree. They see the wrinkled face of a wizard with arms outstretched to the sky. They see treasure in pebbles. They see a windy path that could lead to adventure. And they see you, their fearless guide through this fascinating world.
Find a forest near you and start exploring at discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Hey, it's Dua Lipa. I'm here to tell you about my brand new podcast, Dua Lipa at Your Service. I'll be sitting down with the world's most inspiring minds to uncover what makes them tick, what they've learned from their successes, failures, and the obstacles life has thrown at them. We're going deep with people revolutionizing not just their own industries, but also culture more broadly. From Lisa Taddeo, the author redefining what it means to tell women's stories, to the fashion industry virtuoso Olivier Rousteing. You'll even hear me break bread with some of the most iconic and dishiest names in pop culture, like Sir Elton John.
After a lot of upsets, a lot of disappointments, a lot of betrayals, it's turned out to be the most wonderful life right now that I could have ever imagined.
I can't wait to share all of this and more with you. Listen to Dua Lipa at Your Service on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to It Could Happen Here, a podcast that is, this is a podcast about the world falling apart. The world is, in fact, falling apart extremely quickly right now. And I'm your host, Christopher, and I am here today to talk about an immense occupying army with an extensive record of torture and extrajudicial killings. I am referring, of course, to the Chicago Police Department. And with me to talk about yet more just absolute horrors that this department has committed here and worldwide, I have Raven, who is a journalist from Chicago Free Media. Raven, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, how have you been holding up in these? Oh boy, things are going bad times.
Yeah, we had discussed doing this interview earlier this week, and I don't think either of us expected Russia to invade Ukraine last night.
Yep, that was yeah, and that wasn't even it was the convoys going. This is a time of chaos and death. But I think it's important to understand that it has always been a time of chaos and death, and
right.
Yeah, and I think it's especially where the Chicago Police Department is concerned. We've talked about some of their more famous crimes on the show, but I wanted to have Raven on to talk about a police killing that I don't think got that much attention. I mean, it got a lot of attention in Chicago, but even inside of Chicago, I don't think it's as well known as some of the other police killings. And that's the killing of Rekia Boyd. Raven, do you want to walk us through how basically what happened the night that Dante Servin killed Rekia Boyd? And yeah, we can start from there.
Sure. I mean, there's some context here for sure about sort of the way we ignore the murders of Black women specifically.
Yeah.
And Rekia Boyd was murdered after sort of like the first wave of national Black Lives Matter protests. So it wasn't like it wasn't on the radar, right? That people weren't talking about police killing Black people. But there is this longstanding issue, of course, with like the killings of Black women specifically not getting as much attention, right? And this was just such a horrible incident that, like, I mean, looking at the details, even though I live here and I was like around when it happened, and some of our other, the other journalists in our collective covered the protests and the court drama and everything, it still just blows my mind the way this happened. And ultimately, the most important thing to take away from it is that her family never saw justice. He walked away. He walked away from the incident and then went on to start training police in Latin America, which we can talk about also.
Yeah.
So not only did the Chicago police officer who was off duty with an unregistered gun murder an innocent 22-year-old Black woman hanging out with her friends in a park, he then got a job with like a tactical training institute to travel to Honduras and train police there.
Yeah, and I think we definitely will be getting to the sort of international angle of this, but
the export of American policing, essentially.
Yeah, but I guess for people who aren't familiar with what happened, can we walk through that?
Yeah, so Servin showed up at a park with an unregistered gun. Witnesses reported that he smelled like alcohol that night. He may have been drinking. I don't know that that was ever verified, but certainly wouldn't be surprising. Showed up at this park to complain about a group of people making noise. And one of Rekia Boyd's friends approached the car with his cell phone in his hand, which Servin then would go on to say thought was a gun, and started firing shots and shot Rekia Boyd in the head. He wasn't on duty. He wasn't actively policing. This was a totally outside of the realm of duty incident, right?
Yeah.
And no weapon was ever recovered from the scene, nothing like that. I mean, there was in no universe was there any justification for this, right?
Yeah.
It defies logic, like that it could even happen this way. And after it happened, so not only did he kill Rekia Boyd in this park, but after it happened, there was just a lot of missteps in the justice system. And it had been, I want to say 17 years at that point since a Chicago cop had actually been charged with murder, right? So it had been a long time since there had been even any accountability. And basically the prosecutor, there was something called a directed verdict where the prosecutor essentially undercharged him intentionally, or we think it was intentionally, with like reckless conduct and manslaughter, and the judge tossed the case because the judge was saying, it didn't even meet the criteria for reckless conduct because it was clearly first-degree murder, and then he couldn't be tried again because of rules surrounding double jeopardy.
Which is like just what? Like it's such like I was reading this, like it's just baffling. Like it's like it's this whole thing is like it's very seems very clearly set up to fail. It's like, yeah, like we're gonna intentionally have a case where we try this guy with things that you cannot convict him of because it's not like manslaughter. He drove up and shot her. Like
right.
He very clearly with intention shot Rekia Boyd, and it very much seems like they planned this out, that they were this is we've talked about this on the last CPD episode. Like prosecutors collaborate with judges and the police constantly because that's just how the thing called the justice system works. But like, yeah, like, this is like a particularly egregious example of them just setting up a case that they just knew would fail.
Exactly. And this is the same prosecutor who was ousted in the aftermath of the Laquan McDonald murder. There were very large protests. Then there was a hashtag going on social media. Her name's Anita Alvarez, so the hashtag was Buy Anita. Yeah, and the thing with Anita Alvarez, like I think people outside the city probably don't know much about this, but like this. Anita Alvarez was like so hated that like everyone in the city basically worked together to run her out. Like you had liberals and anarchist groups like working together. Like everyone in the city, like all like the electoralists and the anti-electoralists, like the people who just like have no politics basically whatsoever. Like it was this really incredible like coalition because she like just the stuff Anita Alvarez is doing is just so egregious that everyone was able to find a way to put aside their differences on just the logic of get her out. Right. But, to note, again, that was in the aftermath of the Laquan McDonald shooting. Yeah. And, what happened with Rekia Boyd wasn't enough to spur those large protests. And this is not to like denigrate or demean the people who did come out in protest, because it's still like there were still protests. Don't get me wrong. Like people showed up for Rekia, but the difference in people showing up for Rekia and people showing up for Black men being shot, like that's something that Black women have drawn attention to. Yeah. They're like, why don't you care when we get murdered? And it's become this sort of, ongoing chant. Like if you go to any Chicago racial justice protest, you will hear people say, we do this for Laquan, we do this for Rekia, because it's just one of those names that for whatever reason, based on what was going on in the media at the time, just like didn't make its way outside of Chicago very much. Yeah. And we're seeing a similar sort of situation right now with what happened with Amir Locke in Minneapolis, right? Like that was something where I think a lot of us thought, okay, wow, this is going to explode. This is such just a horrible miscarriage of justice. Like, how could this happen? Surely there will be massive protests again, something like that. And of course, Minneapolis was out there. We had like some small actions here in Chicago, but didn't really catch fire, so to say. I mean, I think that there's always sort of cycles of this where, there's cycles where you get these massive protests and cycles you don't. But, and I think this is one of the things that you can look at with Rekia Boyd too, where it's like, regardless of whether people are in the streets or not, the killing continues. And right. Yeah. And I think that's just sort of, that's an extremely grim thing to live with, but that just,
that's just what the police is, right? And until until they're actually stopped, you're just going to keep getting this cycle of, I don't even know if selective outrage is the right word, but you get these cycles of people who get murdered, and there's these protests, and people who get murdered and get forgotten. And
yeah, and it really does seem to be kind of, there's a lot of layers to it. Like obviously the misogyny against Black women is part of it, and I think the media just is a part of it too. Like, I mean, I'm a part of the media in a sense, but we're alternative media, so it's a little bit different. But there are choices made behind closed doors about what stories to follow and amplify. And I will say, what I will say is, I think because of what happened in 2020, I think there's a lot more scrutiny on Chicago police now, at least more mainstream scrutiny of them than there was back in 2012 when Rekia was murdered.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that we're doing enough, because we absolutely are not. Nope. But I think 2020 did, in some way, push things just like a little bit further, if that makes sense. There are some more liberal mainstream types of people talking about the horrors of Chicago policing and all of that. But, when it comes to Chicago police, like, I just, their apparatus is so massive, like, not just from like the funding they get, but like their media and PR, the prosecutors and the judges, like you mentioned, are absolutely part of the policing apparatus. Like, they're not separate, right? It's prosecutors are cops, and we have a prosecutor for a mayor, and she is a cop. And it was Black youth who tried so hard to speak up about this before she was elected, and said, like, Lori Lightfoot is a cop, and people didn't listen to them. And that's where we're at now, where we have this prosecutor for a mayor who's, because of her background, like, she can only view things through a punitive lens. Like, her answer to everything is just punishment. How can we punish people?
Yeah, like one of the things she was trying to do recently was she wanted to do these, like, basically this measure where they called it like an anti-gang funding thing, but it was basically just like, if there's a group of people, the cops can just take money from them. And it was like, it was this incredible thing. Like, it was part of what's going on here is that I've talked about this before, but like, Lori Lightfoot is, at the time, I think people voted for her partially because they just didn't listen, and the Northsiders were just like, oh, hey, look, it's Lori Lightfoot. But then, like, part of it was like she ran as like the anti-machine candidate, and it was like, no, she's just a cop. But like, what I think is interesting is, like, she's like incredibly widely hated, like to the point where, like, the Chicago City Council is like not notably a anti-police body, but like, even the city council was like, you can't do this. Like, and then they actually blocked. I think if I'm getting my facts right on this, like, I'm pretty sure they blocked Lightfoot's proposal because it was just like,
they did, yeah.
And that's been one of the things that, like, we've had a couple of like weird kind of like attempts to rein the CPD in, but they're not really happening because of like anti-police sentiment. They're basically happening because the city council's feuding with the mayor, which is weird.
Yeah, and I've seen it. Like, it's she's such an God. I could. The figure of Mayor Lori Lightfoot, I mean, it just makes no sense, right? Because she's hated by people on the left, who obviously are anti-policing. She's also hated by the police.
Yeah, the police hate her.
I mean,
it's incredible. Like, she does like,
I mean, if you go through any of the conservative, like, cop blogs and Twitter accounts, Chicago police are very active on social media, right? Which is, it's a whole thing in and of itself, because these people, they shouldn't be broadcasting the things on social media that they do. But she's universally hated by everyone at this point. So, you know, it's been a really tough couple years for Chicago since the riots, especially because Chicago, just the word, has become so loaded in the national media, right? Like it's become this racist boogeyman essentially for like what could happen to your city if the woke mobs successfully defund police or, you know, whatever, which is completely at odds with reality because at no point have we defunded the police. Like their budget just keeps increasing.
Yeah. Like what's their budget? It's like, is it, I want to say it's 40% of the total budget, but I think that's low.
It's something like that. I mean, it's billions of dollars. Like it's, we're pumping billions of dollars into this standing army that is basically occupying
40% of Chicago's budget goes to the police department.
Right. And, you know, all of that money could obviously be spent on other things. And we know what reduces crime. I mean, obviously we could get into like the category of what even is a crime, right?
Yeah.
Like there are certainly lots of things that shouldn't be labeled crimes that are, but we know that communities with resources don't have significant violent crime problems. Like we know that lifting people out of poverty and giving them opportunities and homes and all of these things, like we know that reduces interpersonal harm. And instead we just keep looking at everything through this lens of punishment.
Yep.
And how punitive we can be.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's been, I don't know, the Chicago Police Department is just an absolute horror show. And
it's a horror show, and they're also like, it's a horror show not just because of how evil they are, but also because they're incompetent, right?
Yeah.
So like you've got them doing all of these really bad things, and then they also just like struggle to cover up their crimes, and they're messing up like along the way at every step.
Yeah, and it's I don't know. They have the CPD's like it's they have this kind of, you know, I mean, I don't know how exactly unique it is, but I think. Going back to our sort of theory of like every police department has one thing that they're really good at. It's the CPD has this unique combination of like incompetence, torture, and crime that they do. That's like, I think sets it apart from a lot of other police departments.
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to sort of jump off into the second, I guess, part of the Rekia Boyd story, or really it ceased to be the Rekia Boyd story. It's the story of Dante Servin, which is his role in essentially exporting American policing and the horrors of the horrors of the American police system and the horrors of sort of American imperialism to other countries, because it is not enough that the CPD murders people here. They've also got to do it other places.
Right. And so there was a Chicago Reader piece written about this back in February 2020. Servin's not mentioned in it, but it was a really good story. I recommend people look it up because, you know, some of this research is not like my original research, right? It stems from the research that people with the Invisible Institute did. But essentially, you know, there are Chicago police officers, and there's one in particular. His name is Aaron Cunningham. He's the man who founded this tactical training institute that they go abroad, like they go to different countries, and it's privately funded, though they claim to be working with the feds, and there's a lot of like weird gray area there where there's not a lot of oversight and nobody really knows, like, are you getting federal money to do this? Are you just saying you are? Like what's the deal, right? But Cunningham was essentially like a crooked cop who funded this tactical training institute so that they go overseas to under-resourced countries with under-resourced police departments and train them in how to be police. They train them in crowd control. They train them in like narcotics and drug investigations. They train them in like gang warfare, you know, all of these things, right? And these are countries that have tremendous issues with like, you know, outright warfare going on between gangs and the existing police forces, right? So they're in desperate need of aid, of assistance. And of course, like some of these conflicts that are going on stem from American imperialism to begin with, right? So it's like we caused the problems, then we're going to come in and like send a bunch of cops over who like, you know, have extensive misconduct records in their home cities. And some of them have even just like murdered innocent women in the park.
Yep.
And we're going to have them train your guys into how to be cops.
Yeah. And yeah, you know, that goes about as well as you would expect it to, which is, I mean, one of the things that the reader piece talks about is, so these guys get brought in to train a bunch of cops in El Salvador after the El Salvadorian police do a bunch of horrible massacres. And then they train these cops, and then the cops immediately turn around and also again do a bunch of horrible massacres. And it's this you know, I mean, I don't want to de-emphasize the fact that like El Salvador, for example, like is a place that has its own like native right wing, like it has its own El Salvadorian like right wing death squads, right? And they've you know, they've been backed by the CIA, but like, yeah, and I don't want to like underplay just how violent just like the local reactionaries are, because it's not like they wouldn't also be death squads if the US wasn't there, but like the US, you know, and the Chicago Police Department sending people to train them is making them even worse. And it's
and every place has their own right-wing reactionaries, right? Like we're seeing right now to loop everything together and just bring us back to like what's going on with Ukraine and Russia. It's related, you know, like both sides of this conflict have their own reactionary right-wing forces, right?
Yeah.
And anywhere you go around the world, that's going to be a thing. And empires like the American Empire or the Russian Empire or the El Salvador Empire, you know, whatever empire, they're going to be looking for ways to take advantage of those forces.
Yeah.
To achieve their own ends.
I think that what I think is important, like one of the things I think is important about this politically is to understand that there is there is an incredible amount of international solidarity between cops. Right.
Hi, this is Jill Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And I just sat down with a Minnie Driver.
The Irish traveler said when I was 16, you're going to have a terrible time with men.
Actor, storyteller, and unapologetic Aquarian visionary. Aquarius is all about freedom loving and different perspectives. And I find a lot of people with strong placements in Aquarius are misunderstood. A Sun and Venus in Aquarius in her 7th house spark her unconventional approach to partnership.
He really has taught me to embrace people sleeping in different rooms, on different houses, in different places, but just an embracing of the isness of it all.
If you're navigating your own transformation or just want a chart-side view into how a leading artist integrates astrology, creativity, and real life, this episode is a must listen. Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
What if mind control is real?
If you could control the behavior of anybody around you, what kind of life would you have?
Can you hypnotically persuade someone to buy a car?
When you look at your car, you're going to become overwhelmed with such good feelings.
Can you hypnotize someone into sleeping with you?
I gave her some suggestions to be sexually aroused.
Can you get someone to join your cult?
NLP was used on me to access my subconscious.
NLP, aka Neuro-Linguistic Programming, is a blend of hypnosis, linguistics, and psychology. Fans say it's like finally getting a user manual for your brain.
It's about engineering consciousness.
Mind Games is the story of NLP. Its crazy cast of disciples and the fake doctor who invented it at a New Age commune and sold it to guys in suits. He stood trial for murder and got acquitted. The biggest mind game of all? NLP might actually work.
This is wild.
Listen to Mind Games on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
What do you do when the headlines don't explain what's happening inside of you? I'm Ben Higgins, and If You Can Hear Me is where culture meets the soul, a place for real conversation. Each episode, I sit down with people from all walks of life, celebrities, thinkers, and everyday folks, and we go deeper than the polished story. We talk about what drives us, what shapes us, and what gives us hope. We get honest about the big stuff: identity when you don't recognize yourself anymore, loss that changes you, purpose when success isn't enough, peace when your mind won't slow down, faith when it's complicated. Some guests have answers. Most are still figuring it out. If you've ever felt like there has to be more to the story, this show is for you. Listen to If You Can Hear Me on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
China's Ministry of State Security is one of the most mysterious and powerful spy agencies in the world. But in 2017, the FBI got inside.
This is Special Agent Regal, Special Agent Bradley Hall.
This MSS officer has no idea the U.S. government is on to him. But the FBI has his chats, texts, emails, even his personal diary. Hear how they got it on the Sixth Bureau podcast.
I now have several terabytes of an MSS officer, no doubt, no question, of his life. And that's a unicorn.
No one had ever seen anything like that. It was unbelievable.
This is a story of the inner workings of the MSS and how one man's ambition and mistakes opened its vault of secrets.
Listen to the Sixth Bureau on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
They have, you know, like you know, I've seen. I think there's a book called The Thin Blue Line International, but it's yeah. I mean that's a thing. Like you see this basically everywhere. The cops, like the cops know which side they're on, and it's the side of the other cops. And I think this is something that confuses a lot of people, because you get things like for example, like the Chinese police, right? Like the Chinese police, were trained by, okay, so the Chinese police in Hong Kong, for example, like that police force, is still literally just a colonial British police force. They didn't even bring in new people. They just promoted a new person who was a British colonial police officer, and then made them the new head of the police. And then, those cops are also trained they're trained by American cops, they're trained by British cops. They're trained a lot by Israeli cops. This is the same thing, this is the same thing with this is the sort of the same effect that gets you Eric Prince, being hired by the CCP to run stuff in Xinjiang. There's an incredible right-wing sort of militarist comp alliance that it's a kind of international police solidarity that scrambles a lot of the sort of perceptions of what people think, how people try to think about the world, because
right. Yeah.
Fundamentally, the basis they have is the defense of property and the defense of sort of I used to call it the global white supremacist regime. And they all know, when an American cop goes to El Salvador, they know which side they're on. They're on the cop's side. And it's right. And they share information, they share weapons, they share tactics, they share just literally people. They share training, right. And of course, because again, it's the CPD, they share Dante Servin.
Yeah. And so apparently at some point, very shortly after the murder of Rekia Boyd. It looks like, based on what I've seen on his social media and what I've pieced together from his employment history, it looks like he had begun working with one of these tactical training institutes right before the murder. And then he murdered Rekia Boyd. And I mean, I guess technically I'm not supposed to use the word murder, but whatever, I'm going to use it.
Fuck him.
Yeah, no, fuck him. He murdered Rekia Boyd. Yeah. And so he murdered Rekia Boyd, and then everything happened with like going through court, and he walked away without being charged or imprisoned. I mean, he was charged, but without being convicted or imprisoned. Then the police board, recommended his firing, but he resigned 2 days before he was supposed to have his hearing. So he still gets a pension? I'm pretty sure that's how that works.
God.
Yeah. And so he gets, I have to confirm that, but I'm pretty sure he gets the pension. So he resigns, and then at some point after he resigns, he starts posting to social media about his trips to Honduras. And, is posting photos of like hanging out in the bar with the cops down there and kind of just all of that. And this is not like public information. Like he has like a LinkedIn page where he lists the things he's been doing. Like this is completely public. I don't know why nobody knows about it or has talked about it. But that also I think just comes back to this murder kind of flying under the national radar a lot. And so, we don't know what company or organization he's there with. It doesn't say he's with International Tactical Training Association, which is the Chicago-based group led by Aaron Cunningham and his wife. My guess would be it's that group because that's the big one based out of Chicago. Yeah. But I can't prove it.
Yeah, it could be another right-wing tactical training group that's training death squads in El Salvador.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Is that this is not just happening here in Chicago. So there are these tactical training groups all over, and there are a number of U.S.-based ones started by different police officers from different departments, because it's kind of like a career path for them in a sense, because it's a thing they can do once they retire. And it's a moneymaker. You hold these tactical training seminars. And so a number of them are domestically based, right? Like they're not necessarily going overseas, but what they're doing is they're having these seminars and they're training other police officers in certain things. Like some of them might be like an afternoon session where you go and you learn about firearm safety or something. Then there might be larger ones where you go and you stay and camp out for 3 days and you practice ambushing guerrilla gangs in the jungle or something like that. And then a lot of them are based around gun safety and firearms training, and some of those are open to the general public. It depends. Some of these are only for other cops or law enforcement, and you have to show ID, or military, and you have to prove that you're affiliated with police or military. Some of them are open to the public, and you just have to have a firearms card.
Oh boy.
So that's problematic.
Yep.
For one reason, because we found out in the aftermath of the January 6th Capitol riot that a number of the Capitol rioters did attend firearms training classes, tactical training classes in just various sort of locations.
Yep.
So this is a way for officers who have left the force for whatever reason to then have a captive audience. And they're teaching them how to shoot guns and, follow the more specific sort of things like that. But what kind of conversations are they having? What kind of ideology is being espoused? what kind of other people are showing up to these meetings, and what are they talking about? What groups are they recruiting for? What are their affiliations?
Yeah, and I think that that's something that's important to think about, and also to, you know, have more generations of journalists look into, because, you know, when you look at these, I mean, like, you know, we've had stories like this before, right? Like, I mean, this is a lot of how, for example, like the Taiwanese special forces, for example, spent an enormous amount of, partially special forces, partially just the Taiwanese army, spent an enormous amount of time doing stuff very similar to this. And, you know, the product of that was, and this is Cold War era. They're doing this in the 70s, they're doing this in the 80s, some extent in the 60s. You know, and I mean, the product of this is like Arena. The product of this is, you know, like one of the people they trained did the El Mozote massacre, like, and that kind of stuff. You can trace these influence networks, and you can trace these sort of I mean, a lot of this is, I mean, literally just funded by weird cults. But you can, you know, you can trace these different sort of paramilitary and intelligence influence networks, and what you see at the end of them is a lot of the time it's just a bunch of fascists, and it's a bunch of fascists doing coups, and, you know, like in some sense, like, yeah, this is a kind of like, you know, like liberal democracy has this sort of problem, right? Which is that in order for liberal democracy to, you know, function as a liberal democracy, you have to have cops, and that means that you are producing domestically and internationally a group of just ferocious, bloodthirsty right-wing murderers, and you're giving them state authority, and you're giving them all these training and weapons, and, you know, the product of that is they do what they're trained to do, which is they kill people, they torture people, they train other people how to do this, and yeah, you get these cascading series of effects that lead, you know, a bunch of people taking these classes January 6th. They lead them to coups all over the world. They lead them to death squads all over the world. This has been It Could Happen Here. Join us tomorrow for part 2 of our interview with Raven. You can find us at Instagram and on Twitter at HappenHerePod. Check out the Cool Zone for more of our podcast, and thank you for listening.
Adoption of teens from foster care is a topic not enough people know about, and we're here to change that. I'm April Dinwiddie, host of the new podcast, Navigating Adoption, presented by Adopt US Kids. Each episode brings you compelling real-life adoption stories told by the families that live them, with commentary from experts. Visit adoptuskids.org/podcast or subscribe to Navigating Adoption, presented by Adopt US Kids. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Children and Families and the Ad Council.
Hey there, I'm Scott Rank, host of the podcast History Unplugged. And if you're dreaming of being a full-time podcaster someday, you and I have a lot in common. I used to teach history for a living, which was great, but I wanted something more. And maybe you know what I mean. So I gave podcasting a try, and I did it with Spreaker from iHeart. I could explain how it works in about 90 seconds, but all you really need to know now is that in my experience, the ad revenue with Spreaker has been 3 to 4 times higher than it has been with any other host I've worked with. Now, I get to do what I'm passionate about, teach history, but with more freedom and less stress, while still earning a respectable salary. From just getting started and doing the very basic stuff to taking your podcast in whatever direction you want to take it, Spreaker has all sorts of great tools. So if you want to turn your passion into a podcast and give this a try, visit Spreaker.com. That's Spreaker.com. Get paid to talk about the things you love with Spreaker from iHeart.
Welcome to It Could Happen Here, a podcast about how much I, Christopher Wong, hate the police, and specifically the Chicago Police Department. And we are bringing you part 2 of my interview with Chicago journalist Raven about more crimes of the Chicago Police Department, their international impact, and how the police weaponize race and class lines in order to preserve their power. Enjoy.
You know, I spent a lot of time just in cop social media spaces, right? And of course it's rotting my brain, and it's honestly just really tough to deal with sometimes. But one thing that we see over and over again, if you look at the memes that they share and the posts that they write on Facebook and all of these things, is they see the people as their enemy, right? Like they're trained. The militarization of the police isn't just about the equipment that they have and the money that they have. It's also about their psychology.
Yeah.
And how they view themselves as like warriors fighting the bad guys. But because of the nature of policing, the bad guys are literally anyone who isn't complying with what they say. Yep. And usually this is like Black people, you know, marginalized people, poor people. And then there's sort of this, like, you see a lot of these like memes where they talk about themselves as like sheepdogs protecting the sheep from the wolves. And yeah, I know. And like the sheep are supposed to be like the innocents, which typically, if you really go deep into it, it's like in their minds, that's like women and children who are like mostly white, right?
Yeah.
Like they think they're protecting like white innocents from like bad guys. And there are layers to it, right? Because like, obviously it doesn't always work out that way. And, you know, there are like poor white people in rural areas who deal with police repression. You know, there are like wealthy Black people who get pulled over by the cops just because they're driving while Black. Like there are certainly like layers upon layers here, depending on like class and just everything. But at the end of the day, like they're training themselves up to be a military fighting the people, invading their spaces, taking over. And the psychology of it is just really, really dark too, because you have these people who, because we're sending them into under-resourced communities sort of after the fact, after traumas occurred, after there's been violence, there's been shootings, everyone's poor, you know, whatever. We're sending them into these places where there's just like the most horrible things about poverty and about violence are happening. And that's all they're exposed to. So then they end up with PTSD or all of these problems, you know, like the alcoholism rate, the domestic violence rate, all of these things within the Chicago police force are extremely high. And all of this comes back to, because we're treating everything as punishment, we're coming in after the fact. We're not actually treating these problems at the source. We're just sending people in to manage the chaos after the fact. And then they end up traumatized. They end up enacting more crime and more violence upon these communities. And it just becomes this cycle that no one can get out of. And then it comes back to just like defunding the police and state priorities. Like, where are we putting our resources? Because if we were putting them in the right place, so many of these things wouldn't be happening in the first place.
Yeah, and I think one other thing I think it's important to note that we talked about this on our you know, the episodes about the cartels. We talked about this on our episodes about the other episodes about Chicago police, which is that the other thing that happens is that the Chicago police just they see the drug trade and they go, okay, we're just going to get in on it, and you know, and the sort of the combination of these people, these just incredibly violent armed people with like total impunity and an enormous amount of money, is that, you know, they become themselves in just, you know, they become exactly the same thing that they were, you know, nominally supposed to be fighting, and that has all of these downstream effects. If you talked about the way that this militarizes basically everything, right? This militarizes the police. This has the violence of it has the effect of militarizing, militarizing everyone else. It militarizes the non-state actors, and it just sort of it just keeps rationing up the level of violence. And as long as you keep throwing the state at it, and as long as the state just keeps essentially like going, okay, okay, we have a drug trade, I'll just get a cut of it. And as long as that keeps happening, like all of the stuff that the cops are, you know, nominally there to deal with, is just going to keep escalating because the state because state violence is intensifying and making it worse.
Right. And it's just so like, they're so fucking racist.
Yeah.
Like, I just can't, I mean, like, we have to keep talking about that, because it's just like so much of just like where they get their information and how they exchange. Like, if you look at these cop social networks and where they're getting their information and the kinds of things they're saying to each other about Black people in Chicago are all so ridiculously wrong, because they're just parroting these like cop blogs that they read full of all kinds of just batshit fucking conspiracy theories about like our Black DA or prosecutor, Kim Foxx, being like a puppet of George Soros. They literally believe this.
Yeah.
And it's echoed by people like Tucker Carlson, in national media. Like, anytime Chicago comes up, you will hear these kinds of just completely off the wall conspiracy theories about like communist, BLM, Antifa, Soros funded Kim Foxx, like ruining Chicago. And I'm not like defending Kim Foxx. Don't get me wrong. She's still a prosecutor. She's still like putting people in jail.
Yeah.
But she was elected because she was supposed to be this like big reformist and all of that. And so she's become a target. And then she's also become a target for them because she's a Black woman. So it's easy for them to make her into a lightning rod of hate, basically.
Yeah.
And, like they just, the dehumanization of Black Chicagoans that you see in these Facebook posts that these people are writing, the things that they're tweeting, like, it is violently, disturbingly racist. And all of that comes back to just how they view themselves as like an occupying army in these communities. Like, they don't view themselves as like cooperative partners in helping these communities. Like, it's no, we're there to occupy. We're there to extract resources. We're there to like, benefit off of this gang warfare if we can, and like you mentioned, like, if you look at like the corruption and the things that have gone on with that, I mean, that goes back to city council, right? I mean, we have aldermen, we have alder people who are essentially in bed with the cops looking out for them.
Yep.
And, like, they're dedicated cop aldermen. I mean, like, all of our Chicago aldermen are Democrats by name, but it's like, no, we have 5 or 6 alder people who are Republicans.
Yeah.
Like, they call themselves Democrats because they wouldn't be able to be elected in Chicago if they didn't, but they are absolutely like cop-loving Republicans. They just call themselves Democrats because they like support gay marriage or whatever.
Yep. Well, it's because it's Chicago and you can't run as a the only time a Democrat has ever lost one of these elections was the time why am I blanking on the name of the cult? The time a LaRoucheite accidentally won the primary and then lost in the like that. That's basically it. Like, yeah, I mean, it's this is a Democratic city, but a Democratic city just means incredibly right wing in police, which
right.
Yeah.
And when you look at the history of policing in Chicago, you have to go back decades and decades and kind of look also too at like where a lot of these cops came from in the aftermath of like the dissolution of like the official like mafia and like Al Capone and all that stuff.
Yep.
You had a lot of working class immigrants from like European communities, like the Polish community, the Irish community, the Italian community. And all of these communities have their own like police associations here, like the Italian American Police Association, the Polish American Police Association, all of these things. And so like it becomes this, being a cop to go back to sort of like the international ties here, being a cop becomes this like identity for them and their family. It's like a lot of people are cops because their dad was a cop, their grandpa was a cop, their cousins are cops, their brothers are cops. There's like a family honor sort of in like being a cop, and a lot of them show, you know, and that goes back to why they show so much solidarity too with like cops from other countries, is it's like the profession in and of itself is lionized. And then on top of that, you have right now in Chicago, like, because of gentrification, because of just like immigration patterns and the way communities have changed, we have these like traditionally Polish, Italian communities that feel like they're being encroached upon by mostly like Latinx communities. So we had, for example, like, you know, this shooting, the murder of Anthony Alvarez up on the northwest side, the far northwest side of Chicago last year. And in the aftermath of that, we saw a lot of like tension between the traditional like Polish American community up there and then the new wave of like Latinx immigrants. And the problem is a lot of the people in the Polish community up there have family and relatives who are cops. So we had like cops trashing the memorial, you know, to Anthony Alvarez. We had like Polish biker gangs like riding by the rallies, trying to like intimidate people. And it all comes back to like white supremacy and just straight up racism, right? Like,
there's another example of that with like the Columbus statue that was sent here by Mussolini that eventually, so one of the, I guess you could call it the second wave of the uprising in Chicago, was a bunch of people, like enormous numbers of people throwing things at cops who were attempting to defend this statue. And this was like a huge, like the Italian, like American, like the right wing of it got like extremely mad about this. And there was all of this sort of, I don't know, there's all this sort of tension between
these different communities. And some of that comes back to like also the construction of the interstates, right? So like I don't know when they started building the highways down by UIC, is like in the 50s or the 60s, right? You had this like traditional Italian American community down there by University of Illinois at Chicago and like on Taylor Street. And then people built the highway and it like fucked up a bunch of shit. You know, some people had to sell their homes, you know, their traditional neighborhood was like destroyed, all of these things. And then this university is built and that coincides with that. And so you end up getting a lot of like old school racist Italians getting pissed at the students and at the school and everything in the aftermath. And it's a really, really multicultural school. I don't know if you're familiar with UIC.
Yeah,
but it's like,
went there.
Yeah, so UIC has like one of the largest immigrant student bodies like in like the country. It's just a very, very diverse school. I'm pretty sure white people are actually a minority if you look at like the demographics of just like how people identify in student surveys.
UIC is the University of Illinois in Chicago. It's one of the big universities in the city. Yeah, just for the non-Chicagoans.
Different. There's a different one, University of Chicago, that's like down in Hyde Park.
Yeah, that's the one I went to, which is cursed in many ways.
They've got their whole thing going on because their campus police force is one of the largest private police forces in the world.
Yeah, and I guess we can talk about that a little bit too, because that's this sort of like, it's kind of horrible bind where it's like, so it's that police force is one of the largest police forces in the world. It has shot students. It has shot people who are not students. It does a bunch of horrible things. But then, you know, sometimes there's this kind of trap, right? Because like one of the things that happens is like, well, okay, so you get rid of the UCPD, right? And then you know, okay, so they're going to bring the Chicago Police Department in, and it's like the Chicago Police Department are like one of the few institutions in the world that's worse than like the regular UCPD, and it's, you know, and that was one of the things that was really inspiring. In 2020 was just the way that the abolish the Chicago Police Department like movement was sort of like enfolded in this broader attempt to just abolish Chicago police in general. But it's this weird thing where it's like you have these occupation zones, and it's like that part of the South Side. And the other thing I think that people don't understand about the Chicago Police Department is that they have an absolutely enormous range that they patrol, right? That doesn't include that it goes way off campus. Like they have an absolutely enormous range of things they can include, and they do things like you know, they'll just like lock down the entire campus, and they'll just this will just happen because they'll be like chasing someone who like one of the times while I was there, someone like they'd like stolen something from like a video game store. And the whole campus got locked down. Like the cops were screaming at everyone to stay in the buildings. Like, and they just like, you know, they had this like enormous numbers of cops just sort of like swarmed through the entire campus for like an hour. And this just like happens. I mean, there's cops everywhere. They do stuff like that. And there's this whole, you know, but this is one of those other things where you get these tensions because so UChicago, the University of Chicago also has like, it's not as large, but also has like it also has like a pretty large international student immigrant like population. And there was this there was a Chinese international student who got shot in a robbery
right
last year, and that was a huge. I think that was last year. Yeah, that was. Yeah, it wasn't in January. Yeah,
it was like at the end of the year, I think.
Yeah, and that turned into a huge thing where you had these sudden, you know, because we've had these anti-police protests, but then suddenly there was this huge wing of like basically the right-wing faculty, a bunch of just like absolutely reactionary, like extremely rich CCP scions, and like this sort of like nucleus of the like people in the right-wing law faculty, like the econ people, who suddenly had this like giant thing that was like, well, it was this sort of microcosm of the broader sort of like turn against the anti-police movements by using crime. And they had this whole thing like, we need to keep the campus safe. And they were like, oh, we need to give the UCPD the ability to go off of campus, which, you know, they already have. They're like, we need to give them more money. We need to have more cops everywhere. And it was just, and it's just this sort of like, you get this horrible sort of pendulum effect where like you get this violence, and then, you know, people like the right's response to that violence is just to create just to send in more cops to create more violence, and it just keeps escalating and keeps escalating, and it's and, you know, and there's a sort of dynamic of this, right, where rich students at the University of Chicago, and this is to some extent it's mostly a class and race thing, but it's not entirely, but like people who go there just like have this like incredible fear of literally everyone around them. It's like they turn into mini cops.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
There are people who are screaming about how like just the red line is not safe at night. And I was like, I have literally like, I have walked like 30 blocks back home at 2 a.m. and been completely fine. Like, you guys are just cowards, and you know, you're cowards and extremely racist, but like, yeah, like all of these sort of factors blend together, and you get these coalitions of these right-wing pro-police people who want to just not just like, you know, not just support the police, but want to continue to expand it so they can feel safe. And it's like, you're not even in danger, but they have the same sort of like, this whole town is trying to kill us, like racist cop brain mentality. And yeah, sorry, this has been me being upset about this because
no, I feel you, and it's like but it relates back to kind of like campus policing in general and kind of why it exists, which is that a lot of colleges, I mean, not all of them, it depends on where you are, but like some colleges, especially in like large urban areas, you know, were built in the middle of like largely Black communities.
Yep. And that's so, University of Chicago to a T.
Yeah. And because the land was cheaper to buy, You know, there are reasons why necessarily, like, they're built in these places. And so the campus police departments function as just a way to, like, keep the students isolated from the community. Like, it's making a community within a community. It's making this little enclave. And then, of course, people are then going to view anyone outside of that enclave with, like, racist suspicion, right? Yeah. And if you have immigrant students who may or may not be wealthy, it depends on where they come from, but U of C has, like, a lot of, as far as I'm aware, like, wealthy international students, and they might be coming from countries where, like, there aren't any Black people, or there aren't very many. And just because they're coming from, like, this country doesn't necessarily mean that they, like, are left wing. So they're coming into these communities, you know, with not a lot of experience, just sort of around people who look different from them. And so they're going to be, of course, looking to, like, these police figures then to, quote, protect them. But to go back to it, it's like, okay, well, if you are feeling unsafe on the train at night, for example, why isn't the train safe? Like, why are people using it as, you know, shelter? Why are people doing drugs on the train? Like, why is there violence happening? And that just comes back to, again, like, we're not actually addressing the root problems by just adding more police.
And I will say, like, I think again, like, the other thing that's happening here is really just the University of Chicago, like, is a place to which the world's elite is transplanted. And and you can see this, like, very clearly along, because, like, there is the wealth gap between poor international students and rich international students is, like, it's the largest single wealth gap in the entire university. It's unbelievable. And, you know, and you can watch it playing down on class lines, and it plays down on other lines, right? Where you have like, you know, even like, you have students from, I don't know, you have students from China, you have students from Vietnam, and, like, one of them will be trans. And, you know, it turned, it's like, oh, hey, look, like, like when you have a Chinese trans student, right? It's like, the people who back home have experienced oppression in various ways are consistently anti-police and consistently, like, significantly less bad about this stuff. It's in my experience, it's very much is just, you have this sort of transplanted, like, you have this sort of transplanted elite from other countries that come to the University of Chicago so they can, you know, study economics and go back to their own countries and, like, continue to, like, rob their own populations. And those people are the ones who are doing this stuff. And it's, I don't know, it's, you see a lot of kind of, like, this, like, I think really misguided, like, anti-racism that's like, well, okay, we have to take the security concerns of Asian people seriously. And it's like, this is the Chinese ruling class. This like, you don't need to take these people's concerns seriously. They are they are ferocious right wingers who've just read Hayek for the first time. Like, you guys, these are not the same people as the people who are suffering under the, like,
right. Yeah. And we saw that too with, like, the big wave of Stop Asian Hate protests here last year.
Yeah.
Where we had, like, this big rally down in Chinatown, with, like, a huge number, like, hundreds of people from the community came out, and you had a lot of younger people who very much had, like, you know, defund the police kind of sentiments. But then we had like police representatives speaking at the rally, about how they were going to make, like, Chicago safer for Asian people.
Yeah, and it's like, I just, like, this stuff, like, it makes me so angry. Like, CPD, it was regular CPD. Like, I'm Chinese. They almost fucking killed me on campus. Like, these people, like, they're not these like, they're like, the police don't keep us safe, but, like, you know, there's been this incredible weaponization of the Asian American community. Like, you see this in Chinatown. Yeah. There's been this, like, there's like, Chinatown is, like, and this is different even in the last like 3 or 4 years has turned into this just like incredibly right wing. I mean, it's not everyone, but like you see, like there are like there's a bench in Chicago in front of the library, right? They have these tables, and the tables have an engraved plaque on them that says no loitering, and that says we will call the police on you if you loiter. This is outside of the library. Like it's they have this sort of like this incredibly right wing like anti homeless people campaign that's happening, and it's I don't know, it's one of just the most depressing things I've seen here, because you have you have the Chamber of Commerce as the sort of like as the most powerful political force in a lot of these communities, and like those people are right wingers, and they just they don't have the same interests as like the rest of the Asian American community, and you get this horrible thing, which is what was happening on the Chicago campus, which is like essentially the right wing like pitting just pitting the like basically like pitting Asians against black people, and it's
right
horrible. And it
and it just comes back to like who is benefiting from this, like when we have immigrant communities or non-immigrant communities, like being upset with other communities, what are the greater forces here that are like benefiting from that sort of like infighting? Yep. And it's always like the fascist cops who ultimately come out on top there, because if they can keep the people fighting amongst themselves, or they can stoke prejudice and racism between the people, they can then come in and scoop up resources. And when you look at like a school like University of Chicago, they just have a massive amount of money, right? Like the resources there are just
unbelievable.
And so of course you're going to have people in the community who are resentful of that, who are upset about that, because like they don't have affordable housing. They don't have good jobs. Like they're trying to make a living and keep their kids safe. And here's this like university in the middle of their neighborhood with all of this money.
Yep.
And wow, I'm so amazed. I'm just so happy that like somebody's doing construction right now outside my apartment.
Oh, no. Sorry.
Thank you for this timing. I'm so glad about this. But essentially, like, the students end up being a scapegoat for all of their like all the community's like justified fears about what's going on, right?
Yeah.
They're justified in being upset that they don't have these resources, but it's not necessarily like the individual student.
Yeah, and there have been a lot of really good. So like right before one of the things that was happening in Hyde Park, like right before I got there, was this huge campaign. Basically, there wasn't a level 1 trauma center like on the south side, and so if you get shot, right, they have to like take you in a helicopter to the north side to a hospital there. And, in that time, like there's a good chance you're going to die. And there had been one, but it got shut down because it wasn't making any money. And so, there was this huge community student campaign to force the university to open one of these trauma centers. And so I think it's important that like we don't have to fight each other. Like that, right. That's not a thing that, I think like that university, I don't think it should continue to exist. I think at the very least it should be like taken under community control. But for the people who are there, and I think like for the Asian Americans listening to this, and for people who are students, like you do not have to be the weapon to the cops. You don't. You can work together, and when you do that, you can win, and you can win like really incredibly tangible gains for the community, and you can save people's lives.
It also outside of campus, same deal with Chicago police, right? Yep. Like we don't need to have the Eastern European communities fighting the Latino communities, fighting the Black communities. Like we don't need to have these like all of these communities just like fighting each other instead of like the actual oppressive forces at the top. But, you know, right now we're at like this kind of, I don't know, I guess tipping point, I think, where either people start to show solidarity or we're fucked.
Yep.
Like there are massive, not to get like super existential with you, but like there are massive forces right now, right-wing forces trying to benefit off of all of this factionalization. And as we see tanks rolling into Ukraine, like this is a global phenomenon.
Yeah.
It's not just happening at home. It's happening everywhere. And like, we don't have a lot of time left to stop this. And to bring it back to this like far right faux trucker convoy show that's about to happen and roll into our capital. Like, I'm just struck by the timing of it all. And I'm certainly not going to be like a conspiracy theorist about it and be like, well, Putin has planned this all to like happen at the same time.
Yeah.
But I do think that whether or not it's like planned to happen at the same time, it's absolutely going to benefit these people that, you know, this is happening right now in Ukraine.
And it's the same thing with the just horrific anti-trans bills that the anti-trans, well, like not bills, but anti-trans government action, I guess is the correct term in that's happening in Texas right now. Yeah.
It's you know, like people draw comparisons to the Third Reich and to Nazi Germany and them banning like, you know, homosexual dance parties and things like that. You know, like they didn't start out saying we want to kill all the Jews. Like that's not like, you don't start that way.
Yeah.
You would do the smaller attacks first. You build up to it. You take power inch by inch until like nobody can stop you.
Yeah, but I think you know, there's an important note here though, which is that like it's very easy to sort of, especially in times like this, to sort of just like be in a place where it looks like history is just washing over you, right? That, you know, we're bound by these sort of irresistible powers and forces, and that's not true. Like these kinds of fascist movements can be defeated. These kinds of militarist movements can be defeated, but they can only be defeated when we actually take our place as the subjects of history. Right, like we are the people who through our actions create history, and you know, when we also are the people who create the world we see around us. But you know, and as David Graeber was incredibly fond of saying, right, it's like we are the people who create the world around us, and that means that it can be otherwise. And you know, when we essentially like when we reclaim our, you know, our status as subjects, our status as human beings, our status as the people of which history is composed of, and we can stop these things. Like there do not have to be another, like there don't have to be more Nazis. There don't have to be more genocides. There don't have to be more wars. We can stop them. We just have to fight.
Right. I don't disagree with that. I think it's completely true. I guess I don't know, maybe I'm like a doomer at this point. I don't know. Like,
yeah, I mean,
it's really hard right now to kind of see, I guess, sort of mass resistance forming in the U.S. specifically, just because of the way the pandemic has wrecked us. And I feel like people are just checked out, right? Like they're exhausted. They're broke. You know, 1 million people have died because of the government's just complete lack of adequate handling of COVID. And so I completely agree that like this isn't inevitable. Like we can stop this. At the same time, I don't know what it's going to take for Americans, like as an entity, to actually stand up and fight this. And I'm not blaming individual people, because it's like all the reasons for people being exhausted and checked out are like also by design, right? Because of course, like if we keep people exhausted and checked out, then the oligarchs at the top like can continue to like loot society.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm sort of less sanguine on that, just because, like, you know, because I remember this is the same thing that like everyone said right before the uprising. Like everyone was checked out. Everyone was sort of like, you know, like the pandemic had just started. There was this like general consensus that like mass action was impossible. And then, you know, like 2 days later, they burned down a police station and like they're looting the Miracle Mile. And, you know, these things, like, you know, like every, like the people who are in some sense the most in tune with like what is happening, it'll like often tend to be the people who are most shocked by when these kinds of things just emerge seemingly out of nowhere. And so I don't know. I think we can't know what exactly will set off the next wave, but I think it's a safe bet there will be another one, because there always is. Right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
We've never, like, you know, we have yet to hit a point so bad that people stop fighting, like, ever in history. So. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And that's the long arc of history too, is it's like people have always been fighting for their liberation.
Yeah.
In some way. And if you look at the longer story, you know, there might be very long periods of darkness and repression and collapse. And then people emerge from that, and new societies emerge, new ways of thinking, all of that. And I think where we're at now, like at this moment, there are certainly small ways that people can resist, and ways that we have to focus on like our immediate communities too. You know, it's so easy to feel helpless when you look at things on such a grand scale. Because of course, like we can't all just like run into Ukraine right now and like stop Putin.
Yeah.
There's really not a lot we can do when it comes to like things like that. But we can like take care of our friends. We can like make sure that the people immediately around us like have what they need. We can like check in on like, you know, our unhoused neighbors. We can like take, you know, some people here in Chicago are prepping to like take in Ukrainian refugees, for example, right now. And that's like the sort of action that like is definitely going to be needed. And, you know, like when you look at the story of like something as horrible and just like awful as the Holocaust, like, of course there are all these like small stories of like people who like sheltered people who were being sought out, and you know, there were all these different kinds of resistance movements in Germany and in Poland. And it's not just about like all the people that Hitler killed. It is also about all the people that like that people managed to save, you know. And it is also like, I don't know, we in America especially, it's like we got to get away from the Hitler comparisons, which I know I just made.
Yeah.
But like it's you know, like, don't get me wrong, like there's obviously like plenty of parallels, and it's important to be like students of history and like understand what's going on and everything, but like what we're seeing is like we're going to see a kind of fascism that is unique to our era, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know that Trump is going to come out and call for like outright genocide and like, you know, build death, or like Ron DeSantis is going to get elected and like build death camps. Like, it's going to look different than it has in the past, even if like some of the phenomenon are similar. So what we're looking at instead is like, especially with climate change, we're looking at a lot of controls over borders. And obviously some of that is like what's happening in Europe right now too. But, you know, people are going to be looking to control resources like water, oil, land, as we know that they're like running out. And so this sentiment against like immigrants, especially, you know, that's something that is going to just keep getting worse.
Yeah.
And so I think it makes it harder for people to I guess, recognize that things are as bad as they were, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like, it's just, yeah, mass resistance is the only way out, right?
Yep.
Like, the people have to resist, and we can't keep waiting for like Joe Biden or anyone to be our political savior.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty good note to end on. Yeah, thank you for joining us. Do you have stuff that you want to plug?
Not at the moment. No, I mean, I think I guess our Twitter account, but that's about it.
Okay, yeah. Well, this has been another episode of It Could Happen Here. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Happen Here Pod. You can find stuff at Cool Zone. We have a website. Go there. Stop asking me for sources. They're on the website. They get uploaded. Yeah. So yeah, thank you once again for joining us.
Hey, we'll be back Monday with more episodes every week from now until the heat death of the universe.
It Could Happen Here is a production of Cool Zone Media. For more podcasts from Cool Zone Media, visit our website, coolzonemedia.com, or check us out on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find sources for It Could Happen Here updated monthly at coolzonemedia.com/sources. Thanks for listening.
Hey there, I'm Jess.
Milady Confetti here.
Hi, I'm Psyche.
And I'm Hey Shady Lady.
And welcome to Boss Level,
a podcast where we feature conversations with guests who have leveled up, bringing an XP boost to the table.
We pick the brains of professionals, creators, and bosses in industries across the globe to help our listeners achieve their own boss level.
We are not just creating a podcast, but a gamified and engaged community.
Listen to Boss Level on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Big Brother, North Korea's Forgotten Prince is a new true crime podcast that dives deep into the life and mysterious assassination of the man once destined to be North Korea's next dictator. Join me, Eden Lee, as we investigate a twisting tale of espionage, palace gossip, and political backstabbing, and dive into the motives and suspects behind the most bizarre assassination plot of the 21st century. Listen to Big Brother on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, Elizabeth, you're the co-host of that new podcast, Ridiculous Crime.
Why, yes, I am.
You know what's ridiculous?
Yeah, carpeting in kitchens and bathrooms.
Oh, wow, you are good. But you know what's also ridiculous? A 16-year-old who breaks into a car dealership and steals Guy Fieri's Lamborghini.
What?
Yes, to impress a girl. I'll tell you all about it on Ridiculous Crime, our podcast about absurd and outrageous capers, heist, and cons. It's always 99% murder-free.
And 100% ridiculous. Listen to Ridiculous Crime on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
What if mind control is real?
If you could control the behavior of anybody around you, what kind of life would you have?
Can you hypnotically persuade someone to buy a car?
When you look at your car, you're going to become overwhelmed with such good feelings.
Can you hypnotize someone into sleeping with you?
I gave her some suggestions to be sexually aroused.
Can you get someone to join your cult?
NLP was used on me to access my subconscious.
Mind Games, a new podcast exploring NLP, aka Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Is it a self-help miracle, a shady hypnosis scam, or both? Listen to Mind Games on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You can scroll the headlines all day and still feel empty. I'm Ben Higgins, and If You Can Hear Me is where culture meets the soul. Honest conversations about identity, loss, purpose, peace, faith, and everything in between. Celebrities, thinkers, everyday people, some have answers, most are still figuring it out. And if you've ever felt like there has to be more to the story, this show is for you. Listen to If You Can Hear Me on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Special Agent Regal, Special Agent Bradley Hall.
In 2018, the FBI took down a ring of spies working for China's Ministry of State Security, one of the most mysterious intelligence agencies in the world.
The Sixth Bureau podcast is a story of the inner workings of the MSS and how one man's ambition and mistakes opened its vault of secrets.
Listen to The Sixth Bureau on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Amanda Knox, and in the new podcast, Doubt, The Case of Lucy Letby, we unpack the story of an unimaginable tragedy that gripped the UK in 2023. But what if we didn't get the whole story?
Evidence has been made to fit.
The moment you look at the whole picture, the case collapsed.
What if the truth was disguised by a story we chose to believe?
Oh my God, I think she might be innocent.
Listen to Doubt, The Case of Lucy Letby on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.